as a lot of you guys know, and I have a card, although I don't think today we have new people, we always talk about what we try to do, and that is outreach to people, and it's all about truth. We're trying to expose truth and have platforms for other groups. And that's why Joe is here tonight, because he's been talking about, he won't be speaking for a few minutes, but, you know, for years now, they've been meeting, and I say this every meeting, it's on our website also, that the 9/11 Truth people meet at Thursdays at a little restaurant called Barbeck's, and they're a faithful group that's been, whenever there's the Lancer event, the JFK Lancer, they handed out a lot of DVDs. They've handed out 60,000 free DVDs. And these DVDs are awesome because people, a lot of times, it's seeing is believing. And that Building 7 coming down the way it did opened a lot of people's eyes. So there's a lot of good DVDs. When Victor first came to us, he brought a movie, Thrive, and he was handing out free movies about that, which I still haven't fully watched, even though I promised, and I'm going to. But, you know, there's so many things to expose because the evil is all around us. The bad guys are constantly, you know, throwing new things at us, you know, and new ways to try to dumb us down. You got Common Core going into the schools. You got, you know, I mean, it's just left, right, and center. There's always something. So, you know, our project on the local level is fighting fluoride in the water, and we will prevail. Without a shadow of a doubt, we will prevail because they are so wrong and they don't have a leg to stand on, and more places are stopping the fluoridation in their areas. We have the internet. They can't hide like they did before. They can't use the endorsements that they used for all these years as much because people are more leery of the CDC and the ADA and all those alphabet things. You know, people are more leery of it. But it's going to take this concerted effort. We've been to the city council now 3 times, 3 different dates, and my councilman finally did call me, but I classify him as an idiot, and I don't care if I'm recorded, because this man told me that he doesn't see any reason to look into it. He's fine with the medical consensus, and medical consensus is not science. You know, just as a very smart gentleman told me tonight, we all can believe a lie, but it doesn't make it right or the truth, you know, just because there's consensus among a bunch of people. And so the second thing, and I thought my recorder was working because I'm a firm believer whenever you're talking to any of these people is record it. But this guy will say it again. He will say it again because he believes what he told me when I told him, but what about the consent issue? Because I believe that we need to hit on 2 main things: the consent issue, and then the dose and the fact that, you know, it's a poison, you know, being very, you know, concise about that and not getting off onto too many other things. Just stick with mostly the consent issue. So he said to me, when I told him, what about the consent issue? He said, oh, that happens all the time. We're being medically treated without our consent all the time. And I said, like, and he said it, Kevlar, oh, that happens all the time. And I said, like, when? And he goes, well, like in mental institutions. Like, he said that, you know, and I believe he'll say it again. That makes it okay because, you know, these things happen and it's happening all the time. So, I'm going to have some help, and we're gonna, and plus, we had a doctor here last meeting, and Dr. DeRusso, he's one of us. We have a couple dentists that, without a doubt, there is the consent issue, and it's put like this. Informed consent standard of care. That all doctors or any health professional that's treating you, they can lose their license, they can be fined, they can be charged if they do not get your consent. And that's exactly what's happening in Dallas and so many areas where they are fluoridating without people approving it, because the FDA has classified it as a drug. It's being put in the water for medical treatment of dental decay, you know, preventing dental decay. So it's all right there. And years ago, when people tried to fight these issues, they didn't have what we have right now, especially in Dallas. This is prime. In Dallas, the city council voted to have the water fluoridated. They themselves, a team, just them, yes. I was told that it was the people at large voted for it. But upon looking into it, what had happened was in August of 1965, the city council voted to have it added. A small group of people that were believing that fluoride was a poison, it was, and that this was illegal, they got a petition up to have it be voted on by the people. Well, at that time, the science wasn't really there. People were trying to be nice to the poor people, like they were trying to help, they were feeling sorry, and they thought that this was a way to help people that were needy, yes. And also, the endorsements were out there, and it looked as though this fluoride did help. So, most people with their soft heart, trying to do the right thing, 27,080 people in Dallas voted to keep the fluoridation process going. So if you just look at that, and we start bringing this to the city council of now, they do have the ability to stop at 14 people, 9 of them can make the difference. And the fact that the population in Dallas has grown so much that we now are being affected by 27,080 people, 48 years ago, it's just absurd. I mean, when you really lay it out there. So we're like an onion. We're kind of working it like an onion. And on the 26th, I have an opportunity to speak to them again. And then the problem is the city council is shutting a lot of this down through their ability to do it, which we need to work on. Because now you can only speak once a month. Before you could speak 4 times a month. And so we need to make our voices known. I said last week what we need to do is there's 14 council people and the mayor pro tem. We need to send them emails. But please, please, please stay away from the making people complacent with fluoride. Or the Nazi thing, because I was watching a most recent Alex Jones video talking about how it's 15 minutes. I was watching it, seeing what they were doing with it. She had these 8 glasses of water. She's talking about, and then she gets into the old thing of the Nazis. They did it. It was manipulating the people. I don't think this is going to work, guys. They are already ready to call us tinfoil head, conspiracy people, and also there's a 50-minute or almost an hour debate where Paul Connett is the scientist who's been doing this for 17 years, compiling all this information. He has a son, Michael, who's awesome, and he's a lawyer. And he was debating with these other 2 pro-fluoride people. And towards the end of it, and I'll send it to all you guys, the last words she was saying was, well, the reason this is considered conspiracy is because way back in the 50s and 60s, it was believed that the communists were using fluoride to take us over, and they had these nefarious, whatever the word is, ideas and why. Okay, so we can even maybe understand that some of these processes go on and everything. It's not going to work with the general public. That's why stay away from those things and go with the solid things we have already. We don't need to step out of bounds. We don't have to use words like fluorosilicic acid and all that kind of stuff. I've listened to some of the, just a second, John. I've listened to some of the people that are talking in Austin. But I'm like, oh, you're losing me because you're using all these big words and everything and, all this stuff, it doesn't work. Get the simple thing of the consent issue. You get the simple thing of the dose and how you can't control the dose, but you can control the concentration. This is something they use against us. They'll say, oh, the concentration is safe. Look at all these papers say the concentration is safe. They're right. They can control the concentration, but they can't control the dose. And if we show them we know that, and we keep repeating this to average people, which most people are leery of fluoride, but then you start saying to them, what about the babies? What about the old people? What about people that are drinking lots and lots of water? And I thought of a new one that I'm going to bring up. I haven't heard it. I'm sure it's been said, but I'm a cook. We reduce our food by 50% or more. You are now making that much more concentrated. Every time you make a soup or a sauce or something, you're concentrating that down also in another level. It's really science. So, and John has been burning to say something. Go ahead, John.
Fluoride is an issue as time has come.
Yeah.
In February 15, 2014, the Lancet Journal, the most esteemed medical journal in Britain, came out with an article, Neurobehavioral Effects of Developmental Toxicity, where it lists fluoride and its role in ADD and Alzheimer's.
That's true, and I've already sent that to them. I have a friend who's very close to all that, and he sent it to me right away, and they've got it. And what's really cool, the way that was printed, it's 2 paragraphs, and it shows that the previous listing of toxins, and then right away, very clearly, the next listings of 6 that they've added or whatever. Very concise, but then it says this is backed up by 300 pages of research. You know, so it's done very well. It's a real good thing to forward to them. And folks, really, you got to take it on yourself if you want to, and I hope you do. It's not that hard. If you go to the City of Dallas website, and Google, or use whatever search you want to, say, email for City Council. It'll take you right to it, and it says that this email, and it's a box, you got to fill in your name and email and stuff, it goes to the mayor and everybody. So you want to put in a link to something or you want to say something, you only have to send one. Okay, that will have impact, but it'll have more impact if you go through the list, maybe see which councilman is closer to where you are or whatever, or I suggest number 2, isn't that what it is, number 2? Medrano? Yeah. Medrano. He's somebody who might work with us. Let's nail him. Let's put more to him. Nicely, not attacking them, not saying you're hurting us, the positive side of it. Oh, you could be a hero. These facts are out there. We need your help. Please rally with us. Who do you think can work with us? Something like that. Pull them in. And if we send him these short little, tidbits, there's another one which is 28 minutes long, and it's Professional Perspectives. It is awesome. 28 minutes. It's the best. It's really, how just like with 9/11, there's some really good ones. This is really good, and so it should have impact. And I know, and just before we even started the meeting, the feeling first of all is to say they're not going to listen. They're not on our side. They won't do it. But I'm the Pollyanna optimist that says, let's not do that. Let's go with a positive thing, and let's really believe it. I mean, there's so many things in this world that we don't know how it works. But I do know a lot of people believe going with a positive energy and all this stuff makes a difference, And it better make a difference because these guys hold our money and everything else in their hand. So if we think it's given up and they're just not going to listen, where are we, guys? We can't do that. We have to say, we need to make a change on a broader level. We're going to give them the information. We're going to push them. We're going to try, and we're not going to take 2 years to do it. We're going to really try to nail them. If they don't want to do it this way, then we will go to the errors and omissions, and we will hurt them in their pocket, their personal pocket. I don't want to do that, okay? Because
You have 2 more options.
2 more options.
The medical association you can approach and you can file an injunction against the city.
File an injunction against the city. Well, okay, and I understand. We are going to prevail. But who is going to, those taxpayer dollars, where do they come from that pay those things out? And then what is your end result in the long run on that one issue, I want it to be broader than that. I want these representatives to see that we want them to vote right, care right, and do their jobs, or we'll vote them out. And I know everybody says, yeah, let's do that. But we really need to. We got Don Huffines in there now. We had John Corona for Senatorial District 16. He won. Now Don Huffines won. And even though Corona outspent him, it was a $6 million campaign. Don Huffines has money, and he's a 5-generation Texan, whatever. But you know what he really had? He had people. He had a lot of us getting those signs out there. We got to make a change, guys. We got to, on this lower level of these council people, we've got to We've got to get to them. We got to let them know that we're real and that we're not kooks and we're not going to just be a flash in the pan, but we're going to be watching and we're going to be, really fighting these issues because we care. The fluoride in the water affects them too, because every restaurant they go get iced tea or whatever, you can't avoid it. I mean, right? You can buy your reverse osmosis water, but it's in too many other things too. So, I think I've talked about this probably pretty long. They're on recess right now. I think it's pretty cool if you guys would send them stuff, because when they get back in there, they're all going to be waiting for them at one time. And I think you can look at it either way. I look at it, again, positively. Let them have a whole bunch of crap that's all, there together. Not crap, but, emails or messages or phone calls, and it'll look a lot more hefty, I think. But, guys, please try and do it. Another one of the 14, I'd say work on Gates. Starbucks Gates. What's her first name?
Jennifer Staub.
Jennifer Staubach Gates. She's newly elected. She's right. Okay, Park Cities, I've told some of you people, I don't know if you all know, does not fluoridate their water. 24 years ago, they were asked if they wanted to, and they said no. And they've consistently said no. So, on the east side of 75 is my councilman. That's 14, District 14. Then there's Park Cities in the middle, and then this Gates lady is the high rent district that's not in Park Cities. Goes up to Bluffview and Preston area. Preston Hollow, and stuff like that. She might listen, especially we put it to her, hey, Park Cities, doesn't, and she's hottie, she's attractive and, probably new in there and wants to, make a change and all that. She's probably taking this on as an activity. So we could give her something to do, I think. So let's go with those two. And I think she's 13, but it's not hard to find her. Gates, okay? Okay, do you have a question?
Is she Roger Staubach's daughter?
It is Roger Staubach's daughter. She's. I wonder about the age. Really? I know. Well, I figure she's a Staubach, of course, but she seems older than that. I mean, too old to be his daughter. But how old's Roger Staubach?
70s.
Is he that old? Okay, then yeah, it would be his daughter. Yeah. Okay, well, we got that figured out. Yes.
I've read this recently. That your good friend that you visit with a lot, Pete Sessions,
Huh? Yeah. My buddy, my good old buddy.
he actually has only a token condominium in the Dallas area, and he lives in Florida.
That's really true.
Token apartment.
Florida.
Token
Florida.
apartment.
Over the village where I used to live 20 years ago. 400 square foot nuisance.
And
Never seen that.
the opposition, which was Katrina Pearson, did a video, a 3-minute video, 4-minute video, really well done. Talked to some of the neighbors, and they were saying that this little apartment doesn't even have a washer and dryer, and it was all dusty and leaves all in front of it and everything, no furniture. They were trying to look in the windows, and nobody has ever seen him there. Go ahead.
I got an idea. All those tables and chairs we picked up, let's contact Pete Sessions, see if we can store them.
There you go. That's right. It's good storage. Yeah, no problem. Tell me.
So there's a lot of senior centers.
Okay.
And the voting power in those senior centers is, well, let's just say the politicians cater to those places.
That is really true.
And I find that the senior center directors typically have a true spirit of servitude, and they want to help people.
I see where you're going.
And now, I may not be the type of person that would want to a person, but whomever would be charged with approaching them would be well received, especially if they thought that the seniors' health
Yeah.
was at risk.
Because it does affect babies and seniors more, what's the word called? They're more sensitive to it because of the fact. That's an awesome idea.
And then that would then lead to being directed to the Dallas County Department of Health. And that could be a possible avenue. Because, see, those people are sewn into the community.
Right?
They're not an external force like this, which is not always well received. And if they have these
That's a good idea.
discussions amongst themselves, and they have all of the science,
And some of the science, it talks an awful lot about how it makes the bones fragile in hips And that's something old people are always worried about, their hips, you know, so,
So if
yeah.
somebody were to speak in those places, whichever senior center,
That's a good idea.
and I know that they have free lunches at these senior centers that are offered to the seniors typically. And they also have activities throughout the day and things like this.
That's a great idea.
They do invite speakers to these places. I don't know what the procedure is, but that pushes it in a different direction.
I like that idea. Would anybody be willing to just look up which senior center locations are in the Dallas area?
Well, it's already listed, very easy to find.
Oh, really? Send me that. Will you send me that link? It looks like you got it there for me? Good. I will pursue it. And then when I need more fortitude, I'll get, but that's an excellent idea. That's what we need, excellent ideas like that. So I love it. Perfect, perfect. And I hope the camera got what he was saying was, go to senior centers, talk to the activities director, try to get in there and speak to them. They're a voting block. And it's true, Pete Sessions, just because this ties right together with what Stuart said, Pete Sessions, you never can find him. He was booked at this last run, 3 different places, and he bailed right before D-Day there to get up on the stage. But I got news that he was at C.C. Young Retirement Center, and he showed up there because, money. He goes and he's this nice little Boy Scout boy that, appeals to the women, and he usually gets some donations at those places. So, and probably the vote, too, on top of it. So, that's interesting. You were right. Okay, yes.
Could he not be disqualified under this residency thing?
No, from what I remember about this kind of stuff is it looks bad, and you have to be a resident of Texas, I believe, but you don't have to live in the district. There's a lot of other Congress people and other people that don't live in the district that they run in, but it looks bad. Your opponent will always use it against you. But Pete Sessions was a shoo-in. I mean, he's like 4th ranking in the Republican Party. He's one of those they flip the switch for, seriously. He was going to win no matter what. So he's right up there, going to be Boehner's, whatever. I mean, he's the one who gives out the money, too. He appropriates the money, and then being on the Rules Committee, he's very, very, very powerful. Very powerful. So anyway, so what else? Okay, so this is where we talk about what we did the last week and what we have coming up the next week. And I don't want to be too late for Joe.
Who's going to speak in the next city council meeting?
So far, I'm the only one that's scheduled. And what happened was I should have been able to speak in the last one. That's where I wanted to speak with my daughter. My daughter spoke her 3 minutes, and then I was proud of her. So, and I was proud of how many people came out. That's what we did a week ago. That was when this is the last week, I believe. Joanne led us with her guitar song about the fluoride song. We had, I think 17 people. 17 people got out in the cold and 8 o'clock in the morning. And then we went up to the city council chambers there, which, that's another issue, by the way. You see, they have twice a month, the first, it's always Wednesday, the first and the third council meetings, they meet in the briefing room, which may hold 50 people, probably less. Then they have the major chambers, that's, theater seating and all that stuff, probably holds 300 or so, and they meet the other 2 meetings, the 2nd and the 4th. And the 5th, if there is a 5th week, they don't meet at all. Okay, so the last 2 times we went, we had 21 people one time, and the people couldn't all get in there. They eventually all got in there. Then this last time we had a bunch of people, and they told us that they were having an awards thing that morning, and that as soon as those people came out, our people could go in, because I was right up, I was like number 3 to get in. They go, no, go in the big chamber, go in this big flag room, we'll call you. I double-checked it with 2 other guards, policemen there. You sure we're going to get in? We're going to get in? This is my daughter. I'm going to listen to her, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we're going to do it. Okay, there was a lot of other people there that day supporting some other speakers that spoke after my daughter, and they got in there. So I was really mad. I got in, by the way. Mother Bear gets in. I said, there's no way I'm going in. I don't care. I pushed ahead 4 people, whatever. It wasn't very nice, but they love me anyway. So they realized I was a mother, you know. So the point of the matter is, a lot of my friends and you people that came to go up there got, you weren't allowed in. There wasn't the room. So that's another thing I talked to my councilman about. And I said, wait a second now. This happened twice. What's the deal? The big chambers is opened. Why isn't it being used? He said, ask the mayor. We don't like it either, but the mayor likes it. And he said, I said, so the mayor decides this. Okay. That's another thing we need to talk to him about. Why? Why, if we spent the time, put the money in the meter, we're all there, we want to be involved in this process, yet we're stuck into another room and then not let in. So please, people, send a message to the mayor and tell him, we should meet in the big chambers. It's there. It's not being used for anything else. It's absurd. And so we need to push that because it just squashes people wanting to come, I mean, people get up and then it's like you don't even get to go in. So that's baloney. So we need to fight that. So, okay. So anyways, we did that. I'm sure it's having an effect. It's played on 101.9, right? 101.1 all throughout the week. So the message is going forward. They know we're getting on the ballot. So I was supposed to speak that day, but they didn't let me speak because this new rule went into play that it's not once a month, it's once every 30 days. And since February had 28 days, I have to wait until the next time they're meeting. And since they're on recess for 2 weeks, which they take every March, it's not until the 26th. So on the 26th is when I have an opportunity again. And then on the 27th, guys, in the morning, 8:15, that's when you can call in. I can't call for you. You don't have to live in Dallas. You call in at 8:15 in the morning and say, I want to speak at the next meeting, and I want the morning time, and see how many of you guys can get in and on it. So we need to keep being in front of their face and then behind the scenes too. And at any time, I told my councilman, we have 2 dentists that have a firm in Arlington that I handed everybody one of these brochures that this firm gives out to their, it's a dental firm, I guess I should call it, office. And they give it out, this pamphlet, to their patients, And he said, well, you'd have to have more than 2 dentists. So, like I say, I think this guy is an idiot, and I think that's appropriate to say because I mean, really, more than 2 dentists, that's a lot, that want to come and speak. So, Marjorie, did you have something?
Well, I'm sure you was coached that by our intelligence community, probably as far back as November or October of last year.
Yeah.
I bet even money on it.
What's happening right now is there has been a lot of places like in Portland that are having success. Well, the opposition, the pro-fluoride people, do not want this to happen for a multitude of reasons, and so they're coaching their people on how to discredit us, And there's actually a webinar that I have. If anybody wants it, I'll send it to you. It's really telling because it's the bad guys webinar, and somebody taped it. And on it, it's telling them how to combat what we say and what we do. And so it's pretty interesting because what they don't like us to do, we just need to do more of it. So we all need to listen to it because it's giving us the keys of what they don't like because it's effective. Go ahead.
Can you send it to me?
Sure, I will. Anybody that wants it, give me your email address and I'll send it to you. It's really interesting.
It's on the
Would you give it to me again? Because David, who's usually here, he's not here. He's sick. And I rely on other people to help me, which I need more help in the department of organizing data, and we need to have a better way of having email lists and everything because we don't do a good job in that area. We need to do better somehow. So, anybody have food coming? There you go. Okay, so let's see what else. This last week was Open Carry, which is Come and Take It Texas or Come and Take It Dallas. It's the 3rd Saturday of the month. 9 people were there, actually 11 people, but when you look at the pictures, it's 9. 2 people weren't in the pictures, which was a respectable turnout when you think about it. I mean, these people are willing to come out. They're usually the regulars, to go down to the grassy knoll, which is Dealey Plaza, and they meet at 10 o'clock and then walk the streets a little and then have lunch. There were 2 very big open carries. I use the word open carry, but that's what they're doing. The title is really Come and Take It Dallas or Come and Take It Texas. But there was a big one where Alex Jones called people to come on Thursday because of what Bloomberg is doing, or, it's to, right? So can you comment on what that is he was doing? Yeah, so he was just trying to show that people are still going to carry their guns when these other places like Connecticut, right? Okay, they're doing these gun bans and talking about confiscation and stuff like that. So they got 100 people, and it was just a call in about like 24 hours, and they got 100 people. Well, Saturday, they had already planned to have one. Alex just kind of preempted it, unfortunately. But they still got almost 100 people on Saturday. So that pulls from our people, too. A lot of the people that go down to Austin are really the Dallas-Fort Worth people. But they're having more of these. Some of them will have 50 or 100 or 70 or 10, whatever. But it's just the concept of being seen with the guns. So they had one on, yeah, that's right. It's because it was the anniversary of Grisham. That's how you say his name? Yeah, the guy that started this whole thing because he was out walking with his son with a gun. Somebody was scared. The police came and took him to jail when he was totally within his rights to be there. So that's what started this whole thing of, and it was Murdoch, who's been here and talked to us before, I love Murdoch, that he was like, wow, if people are scared of seeing guns, they need to see more guns so that they realize it's not the guns to be afraid of. So it's going well in Dallas, and they're not getting calls anymore or anything. So that was what we did this last week. And then and there was also 2 other events, but some of that I think got a little rained out. Did you go to the geoengineering one?
I had a conflict and couldn't go.
The weather's...
I was in a conference all day.
Oh, okay. Well, the geoengineering one was one we were promoting, which the chemtrail, the word chemtrail, which I think is a very good, label or name or whatever. It's their word. They're kind of changing, even they, who our people or whatever, are saying geoengineering. It's a little bit broader to what they're doing. And Kristen Megan, that's her name, right? Christian Megan. I'm pretty sure that's her name. Anyways, she's the one in the Air Force for 9 years. And she is the one who's a whistleblower, which hopefully she'll be in our area soon. But the geoengineering walks, that was a national one. So I don't know how well because in our area it's when the storm started coming in. So I think it lost some from steam there. Okay, so what else? Now coming up, okay, so crossover, the open carry thing and the Connecticut thing, Power Hour. Love the Power Hour on... I wrote it down what day it was. This guy, Wolfgang Hilberg, Hailbig. Hilbig. I guess it's Hilbig is his name. Helbig.
H-A-L-B-I-G.
He's awesome. He's like totally awesome. We are really, it's off the charts how great he is because he's got all the credentials behind him. He's a security expert he was a dean of a college. He was a trooper. He's never, been into conspiracy stuff or anything like that. But he totally believes the Sandy Hook situation was a total scam. He literally is coming out and saying, there were no dead bodies. I mean, very few people do that. But he's taken it to the 9 yards because he's had 16 questions. And they will not answer them, and the FBI has come on him twice, okay? And so he was on Power Hour before he was on Alex Jones. And he was on Alex Jones. I wrote it down so you guys can find these things. But if you Google his name, it's on this piece of paper somewhere. I think it was... Anyways, it was just the other day he was on... wrong paper probably. He was on Alex Jones, and the Power Hour, he did an excellent job, and that was less than a week ago. If you go to the Power Hour, go to the top, go to the archives, if you get the right week at least, and I know it's the right week, All of her shows are broken down by the hour, and it'll say who spoke and what they spoke about. So it's totally awesome. And what he's going to be going to Connecticut, and what he's even saying is, all these gun bans are coming from the Sandy Hook story or event, okay? You discredit that event, it crumbles what they're trying to do with the ban. And he's awesome. We need to get behind this guy. Just 1 second. Okay, I promise. Okay, because I get lost when I do that, you know? Okay, so he is calling for the, okay, go ahead, tell me what you said. No, I was trying to
It would be much safer in representing him to say that he was stating there is no evidence that there were any dead bodies. Because he's talking in the negative, that everything that should be there when there's deaths, like medical reports and medical examiners, that's not there.
Right.
But for him to declare there was nobody killed there, I don't think he's done that, so just.
I think he did, but you can listen to it yourself, or you can watch it. But you're right. I mean, for protecting him would be good to do that. But what he's trying to say is, what was I going to say?
The evidence is missing.
Totally, and they won't even answer the question. And he was at Columbine, and he was at all these other ones, and it just doesn't hold true to form. And we all have had the suspicion of how skinny this boy was, and he has autism. He had, Asperger's. I don't know, he had one or the other. Well, this guy, Wolfgang, his child has that too. And he says, I know that these, this malady or whatever you want to call it, you can't walk as good. You don't have how would he have good aim like that? And that all these 26 people were fatally shot. Nobody would, that's like incredible because, no real injury people. Everybody's, it's like, he just can't even believe it. And he brings up some, again, not far-reaching things, and this is what he says. He's not asking for any bloody pictures. He's not trying to interview parents necessarily or anything like that. He just wants to know just the basic things. Why were porta potties ordered that morning, but there was no order for care flights, The normal standard operating procedure in a situation like this didn't happen. So, and like I say, the FBI has come to him twice at that point, but he's not a citizen. He was from Hungary, and he's a citizen now. But he values this country, and he says what a lot of people that are not just born citizens here, wake up, people. We got to see this here. We got to fight for it. He even said that his wife is telling him to shut up a little bit, But he said, we have to. So it's even straining his relationship to do this. So what he's demanding is that the papers get released. That's what he was saying was, and that's how we can help him. Google his name, look up his story, and he needs donations and he needs support of people watching what he's doing. And what he's saying is, never before do they seal the reports. Why are the reports sealed? What are they hiding? What's not there? Plus, everyone, y'all probably know, they leveled the building, They leveled the building. Right? So, and it sounds gruesome, but some people in the medical field, where's the blood? He said that in these other places where he's been, there is lots of blood and skulls and different things. There was no collection of all this matter, and you have to collect it, scientifically, or medically, and none of these things happen. So that's the questions are really, really good. You got to look him up, and it's awesome. So that was that and that. And coming up this week,
His name again?
Wolfgang
Helbig.
Hel-
J-L-B-I-G.
Helbig.
Naturalized American citizen, very proud of being an American.
Yes, very, very happy to be an American. Okay, so now events coming up, guys. Another thing, like I tell you all, go to activistfortruth.com. It helps us in many, many ways. Check the calendar. Make sure that we have things on there, because someone told me we didn't have something on there, and it helped us catch that. Albert, you have a question?
On what you were saying, standard rule of analysis, only the guilty destroy the evidence. Waco, Oklahoma City, Sandy Hook.
Yeah, 9/11.
All of them.
I know. And it's so obvious, It's so obvious to a lot of us that are listening. But, there's so many people still out there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to make one comment about what he said in relation to somebody that's usual kind of subject. I worked indirectly with Philip Morris.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it had to be somebody, oh yeah, they're trying to bury the evidence. I actually remember getting an email that said, please do not delete any files. We really need this stuff as evidence to support our position and certainly don't want to look like we're destroying files, et cetera. That's a cigarette company. You know,
Right.
This is back in the mid-90s. It was facing one of these smokers' lawsuits and they were saying, let's not delete files. So yeah, it is always suspicious. Gee,
Yeah,
why
it
did they
is.
Ship all the scrap to Far East after 9/11. Why did they raise the building after Sandy Hook and all this stuff?
That's really true, because when you think in your own sake, you want that evidence when you're innocent. You want to be able to have that to be able to prove, the story. So, anyways, let me check real quick. So, on the what's next week? Anybody know? The 24th, right? We're starting something new. 24th, then we have the 31st. Hold on one second, guys.
What is on the 24th?
And the 14th. I don't have a speaker booked. I had been doing that and trying to do that, and it was getting very frustrating for me because I would think I had people and then I didn't have people. And I don't like disappointing people. So I guess it's going to be a surprise from now on, whoever we have, if we have, and if we don't have, the meeting will end sooner. Or trust me, you guys usually always have enough to talk about, and we can have a community exchange. 3 times was enough that I thought, this is too frustrating. I don't want to disappoint people. So we're going to be meeting at 7 to 8. We're going to be catching up and doing all this kind of stuff. 8 o'clock, probably we'll have someone. I'm very, very, very passionate about hemp. I'm very, very passionate about promoting that information. I'm going to be doing that. I want to get a speaker that'll come here. It frustrates me too because there's a lot of organizations out there that are fighting for this. I try to ask them for someone to come talk to us and I don't get a response, It's bizarre to me because you think they'd want to. But a lot of states are nullifying it. Tennessee, Kentucky, they're working on it. Legislation's going in. Our legislature in Texas is going to be voting next year because they vote every other year. We got some new guys in there that are going to maybe want to prove themselves. We need to get on it soon by checking these other states out, getting some of their verbiage of what they're putting forward in their House and then Senate. And because hemp, I saw before 2,500 uses for hemp. Recently, I saw 5,600. I don't know. I guess it's possible. But, it's incredible. It could change everything, because it's one of the best proteins, and it's just, you can make cars and fuel, and farmers would have something to do again, not GMO. It's incredible. So we need to really all, between now and next meeting, get some hemp on, get some looking into hemp, and yes. And one more thing, I did sign up for Hemp Week. I think it's in June, and we will put on a hemp festival, and we're going to have music, and it's going to be like a hemp festival. We'll have kind of hippie-ish in a way, but we will have samples and stuff like that, and it'll be a fun event, very fun event, and it's Hemp Week, so it's going to be national. A lot of places will be doing it. And in our neighborhood, we have Willie Nelson kind of in our neighborhood, and he. Did you know that? Willie Nelson is a real big proponent of hemp and all that stuff. So you never know. We could have a pretty wing-dinging one, and we should. It's Dallas. So, okay. Yes, Brian. Go ahead.
There are a lot of penny stocks in the hemp industry that are absolutely exploding right now for the last month or so.
Really?
I've made some money on a few of them. Right
No kidding.
Looks like some of them gone from 10 cents to $1.
Okay, that's 10 times, yeah. Would you speak about that next week? Can you be here on Monday? Let's make it a hemp day, okay? We're going to make it a hemp conversation, and maybe we'll have an official speaker. If not, we'll just have lots of flyers and stuff and samples. I'll get some stuff. Hemp seeds are really, really good. I don't know, who's ever tried hemp seeds here? Aren't they good? They're delicious, and they're expensive, but they're yummy, and they're very high in protein. They're incredible. Anyway, so we'll make next Monday a hemp day, and we'll see if we'll have an official speaker. Yes, sir?
You were talking about all the new applications they're thinking of. I've read that if you get high on it, your imagination just goes wild with
Oh.
new applications.
There you go. Well, there you go. Well, and unfortunately, a lot of people think that hemp, but you can't get high on hemp, you know. So, and then that'll go right into the marijuana use, though.
Brownies for these?
Actually, I do have a recipe for hemp brownies. So maybe next Monday I'm a cook, you know. So, but you know, the marijuana issue is another one. I'm totally into the medicinal marijuana. I saw this. There's this it's a 1-hour video that just came out again because he's this doctor that was against marijuana. And about a year ago, he made a documentary about the uses of marijuana medically. And now he has a new one out. And before the day's over, I'll find the name because I'm horrible with names. Amazing. It helps epilepsy. And, you know, in Colorado, it's doing amazing things. And they're producing a marijuana syrup, I guess you call it, that's actually low in THC, which is the hallucinogenic thing, but it has the medicinal properties. So we're giving it to children because a lot of children are taking it, you know. So anyways, that's neither here nor there. We got to get on to Joe. I don't know if I'm missing any other announcements for next week. Marjorie, do we have anything that we need to go to?
Yeah, there's going to be a rally against corruption on April 5th. I'm going to pass this flyer.
Okay, she's got a flyer. April 5th comes on what day of the week?
Saturday.
It's a Saturday. This rally against corruption is a monthly. Isn't it a monthly?
Well, it's been a national call to action this spring, and not everybody was able to get something together on March 1st.
That's right.
But I think April 5th is going to work.
April 5th, it's a Saturday, and is it going to be at Clyde Warren Park?
Yes.
Okay, that's where
11 a.m.
that's where they usually have it. Guys, we need to do this because what's really great is when they do these ones against corruption, you can bring whatever you want to bring, the Federal Reserve or whatever, you know, and it's everybody uniting together. But it's another group putting it together, and the ones that do this are really usually Reddit or Code Pink or who's doing it this time?
Well, actually I am because.
Oh, Marjorie, awesome.
Because no one else was available to start it. But,
To start.
Leslie is going to bring the sign from last year, so that'll be on hand. And I think Switchblade wants to speak, and I
Switchblade?
really want to speak. And anybody who wants to speak about how corruption impacts your issue is more than welcome.
Good.
And at the statewide Move On conference.
Move On is usually involved in this, yes.
They, after a lengthy discussion, they reached a consensus that money out of politics is the #1 issue that they're going to be focusing on for the next, at least the next 6 months.
Okay, let's move on. So guys, what we can do with going to these other events is that we're uniting with groups that maybe normally don't think that they can unite with us, but we can show them, because a lot of these other groups that are activists don't think that they can find a common ground with us, but if we get to know them, they'll realize it, you know? So, okay, so I think we got it covered. Anybody else have an announcement or something we should go to or be part of in the next week? Nothing? Okay, then okay. JoeStokes is here, and like I talk about it all the time, it's when you go to our website, along the right side, their group that meets at Barbeck's every Thursday at 7 o'clock is always listed there, and we hope you get more people over there. I'll let you get right on with your program about 9/11, which you want to talk about.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you for being here.
Is there anyone here who still believes the whole story about the 19 Arabs taking over the planes? Everybody understands 9/11? Everybody gets it? Everybody understands that it was an inside job? Anyone disagree? Well, bye. I'm not needed then. I thought I would be speaking to the choir here. I'll just say that I was ready for 9/11, and that I watched how the election in 2000 was stolen, and I knew that the Bush family was criminals. When the plane hit the first tower, I saw it because TV was on in the library where I worked, and it's like, wow, tragedy. Second plane hit. No, this is terrorists. something happened, something hit the Pentagon after that, and this time passed, something was able, and I was immediately thinking, where's our defenses? Something's big time wrong. This should not happen. So I was one of those weirdos who that first night, instead of watching the thing they showed you repeatedly again and again, telling who did it and how it happened and all that, I was already looking for alternative versions of it to find out what really happened. And that was day one, and I followed it ever since. There was a time there on that run up to the Iraqi war where there was such hysteria and everybody was paranoid about all this that I was kind of like, maybe I'm wrong. Me and my crazy conspiracy theory, maybe I'm wrong. But then they did announce that they were going to investigate and put Henry Kissinger to head the investigation. And it's like, no, I'm right. If they're going to put Kissinger up there, I knew that everything was going to be bogus. So about 2007 was probably 2008 was when things in the truth movement kind of exploded. All of a sudden, people all over, groups forming and all. So I looked at Meetup and I saw that people were waiting for somebody to start a group, and I didn't see anybody raising their hand, so I started the group. And since that time, you've already said we've distributed about 60,000 DVDs. We've marched in probably close to a dozen Martin Luther King parades. We've flown a banner over the Byron Nelson golf tournament. Google WTC 7, reinvestigate 9/11. We've had conferences, we've had speakers, we've rented Lakewood Theater on a couple of occasions and brought speakers and shown movies. We're doing what we can to kind of alert the people as to what's going on. A lot of people in the movement think that, well, if we can force a new investigation, see, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think we can ever force that. I think everything in our government is so sewn up, it's so taken over, that that's not likely to happen. But if 9/11, once you get this, and it's easy to get, it's real easy to understand if you're willing to look. You've been told not to look because the powers that be, and we have been demonized because the things that are effective are the things that are shut down or made to look the most evil of all. Why I persist in this is that once you get it, all of a sudden the blinders come off. And you abandon that mythology and the fairy tales you were living by, and you start seeing things as they really are. And it's only when people are informed and kind of aware that anything can change, as long as you're just kind of, programmed. As long as you're programmed, nothing's going to change. So this stands a chance of changing something somewhere down the road. But also, you get more and more people watching out. It's like the Columbine, not Columbine, but Aurora movie shooting and the Boston Marathon and Sandy Hook. As soon as those things happened, people were going, whoa, look it, because they were primed, they're ready. And I'm sure most of that was because people became aware after 9/11. The other thing is, you look at the post-9/11 world, this world we're living in now, with the spying on everybody, the endless wars, the thing in the Middle East, everything, our empire, the bank. You start looking around, and most of this was allowed to happen by 9/11. 9/11 was a psychological operation against us, but against the world, to bamboozle the world into accepting what was on the agenda before 9/11. That's just when they kicked it into overdrive. Rather than for me to talk a long time about this, I thought, let me show some video, because I picked 3 good ones that kind of cover a big spectrum of the event. And then maybe later, if there's time, I can answer any questions you have. And if you cannot see, maybe you get where you can see. Can the lights be changed in it?
Maybe we could get the lights down a little bit.
Yeah.
There's 2 seats over here, you guys. There's 3 seats over here.
This little introduction is kind of a humorous take on it.
On the morning of September 11th, 2001, 19 men armed with box cutters, directed by a man on dialysis in a cave fortress halfway around the world, using a satellite phone and a laptop, directed the most sophisticated penetration of the most heavily defended airspace in the world. overpowering the passengers and the military combat trained pilots on 4 commercial aircraft before flying those planes wildly off course for over an hour without being molested by a single fighter interceptor. These 19 hijackers, devout religious fundamentalists who like to drink alcohol, snort cocaine, and live with pink-haired strippers, managed to knock down 3 buildings with 2 planes in New York. While in Washington, a pilot who couldn't handle a single-engine Cessna was able to fly a 757 in an 8,000-foot descending 270-degree corkscrew turn to come exactly level with the ground, hitting the Pentagon and the budget analyst office where DoD staffers were working on the mystery of the $2.3 trillion that Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld had announced missing from the Pentagon's coffers in a press conference the day before, on September 10, 2001. Luckily, the news anchors knew who did it within minutes. Osama bin Laden. The pundits knew within hours.
Osama bin Laden.
The administration knew within the day.
Terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbored them.
And the evidence literally fell into the FBI's lap.
That a hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site. You can believe that.
But for some reason, a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists demanded an investigation into the greatest attack on American soil in history. That investigation was delayed, underfunded, set up to fail, a conflict of interest, and a cover-up from start to finish. It was based on testimony extracted through torture, the records of which were destroyed. It failed to mention the existence of WTC-7, Able Danger, P-TEC, Sibel Edmonds, OBL and the CIA, and the drills of hijacked aircraft being flown into buildings that were being simulated at the precise same time that those events were actually happening. It was lied to by the Pentagon, the CIA, the Bush administration, and as for Bush and Cheney, well, no one knows what they told it because they testified in secret, off the record, not under oath, and behind closed doors. It didn't bother to look at who funded the attacks because that question is ultimately of little practical significance. Still, the 9/11 Commission is brilliantly answering all of the questions the public had, except most of the victims' family members' questions, and pinned blame on all the people responsible, although no one so much as lost their job, determining the attacks were
Failure of imagination.
because
Nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government could envision flying airplanes into buildings.
except the Pentagon, FEMA, NORAD, and the NRO. The DIA destroyed 2.5 terabytes of data on Able Danger, but that's okay because it probably wasn't important. The SEC destroyed their records on the investigation into the insider trading before the attacks, but that's okay because destroying the records of the largest investigation in SEC history is just part of routine record keeping. NIST has classified the data that they used for their model of WTC-7's collapse, but that's okay because knowing how they made their model of the collapse would jeopardize public safety. The FBI has argued that all material related to their investigation of 9/11 should be kept secret from the public, but that's okay because the FBI probably has nothing to hide. This man never existed, nor is anything he had to say worthy of your attention, and if you say otherwise, you are a paranoid conspiracy theorist and deserve to be shunned by all of humanity. Likewise him, and her, and her, and her, and him. Osama bin Laden lived in the cave fortress in the hills of Afghanistan, but somehow got away. Then he was hiding out in Tora Bora, but somehow got away. Then he lived in Abbottabad for years, taunting the most comprehensive intelligence dragnet, employing the most sophisticated technology in the history of the world for a decade, releasing video after video with complete impunity and getting younger and younger as he did so, before finally being found in a daring SEAL team raid which wasn't recorded on video, in which he didn't resist or use his wife as a human shield, and in which these crack special forces operatives panicked and killed this unarmed man, supposedly the best source of intelligence about those dastardly terrorists on the entire planet. Then they dumped his body in the ocean before telling anyone about it. Then a couple dozen of that team's members died in a helicopter crash in Afghanistan. This is the story of 9/11, brought to you by the media, which told you the hard truths about
His head could be seen to move violently forward.
and
They took the babies out of incubators.
and
Mobile production facilities,
and
the rescue of Jessica Lynch.
if you have any questions about this story, you are a batshit paranoid tinfoil dog-abusing baby hater and will be reviled by everyone. If you love your country and or freedom, happiness, rainbows, rock and roll, puppy dogs, apple pie, and your grandma, you will never ever express doubts about any part of this story to anyone. Ever. This has been a public service announcement by the friends of the FBI, CIA, NSA, DIA, SEC, AFM, White House, NIST, and the 9/11 Commission. Because ignorance is strength.
I will, before this starts, I'll tell, there's a woman in here named Lynn Margulies. Lynn Margulies is a scientist.
Can you move the mic back where I can actually hear something on tape here?
There's a woman who will speak in various parts of this named Lynn Margulies. She was a very well-renowned scientist, won lots of awards. She died, I guess, about a year ago. This was the wife of Carl Sagan, who comes out and speaks about this.
Throughout the ages, architects and engineers designed and built the great structures that have made our world and withstood the test of time. Hi, I'm Ed Asner. Welcome to Architects and Engineers. Let's look now at modern steel frame buildings. This is the Empire State Building, a marvel of modern architecture. It was built to last. Architects and engineers of today use computers to design and engineer buildings that will endure the forces of nature, such as earthquakes, fires, and hurricanes. This modern skyscraper was also built to last. We've seen buildings completely destroyed like this before, but only when done intentionally. Danny Jowenko is the expert on this in Europe. What did he say?
Dit is controlled demolition. Zeker weten, zeker weten. Er is nagesprongen. Dit is in opdracht gebeurd. Het heeft een team gedaan van experts.
Let's compare. Explosives are used to demolish buildings like this in just seconds. Okay, so it's a controlled demolition. What's the problem with that? Well, it happened on the afternoon of 9/11 at the World Trade Center. Let's just think about this. Controlled demolitions cannot be engineered and rigged in a day. It takes months. And therefore, this event must have been planned in advance.
Keep your eye on that building as they're coming down.
Watch it blow up. Move it back. We are walking back. There's a building about to blow up.
Did they actually use the word brought down, and who was it that was telling you this?
The fire department, and they did use the word, we're going to have to bring it down.
And these people heard explosions.
We heard this sound that sounded like a clap of thunder. It looked like there was a shockwave ripping through the building, and the windows all busted out. About a second later, the bottom floor caved out. The building followed after that.
He takes his hand off, and you hear 3, 2, 1, and it was boom, 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 boom.
And these reporters recognized it as a controlled demolition.
And I turned in time to see what looked like a skyscraper implosion. It looked like it had been done by a demolition crew. The whole thing just collapsing down on itself.
For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
It was almost as if it were a planned implosion. It just pancaked.
So what's the problem if this was a planned demolition? Well, we are told by government agencies that this building came down as a result of normal office fires. The National Institute of Standards and Technology produced their final report in 2008.
World Trade Center 7 collapsed because of fires fueled by office furnishings. It did not collapse from explosives or from fuel oil fires.
Well, what do you think brought down the building?
And what caught my eye is more than 1,300 architects and engineers examined the evidence about Building 7's collapse and disagree with the official report issued by the National Institute of Standards and Technology. I certainly am much more open-minded about it than I was, and it is because of the involvement of the 9/11 families and all these engineers and architects.
You are about to hear from architect of 23 years, Richard Gage, AIA, member of the American Institute of Architects and founder of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. Now there are more than 1,500 architects and engineers, who say that it could not have been brought down by office fires. They are backed by 9/11 family members who are calling for an independent, unbiased investigation.
I'm Richard Gage. Fires have never before caused the collapse of any skyscraper, even though there are numerous examples of much hotter, larger, and longer-lasting fires in these buildings. And in the case of Building 7, the fire that NIST said started the collapse had actually burned out over an hour before. It could not have caused the collapse, as NIST claims. Yet this 47-story, modern steel-framed skyscraper, which was not hit by an airplane, collapses mostly into its own footprint like a house of cards, as fast as a bowling ball falling off the side of the building, in just under 7 seconds. Listen to the experts.
Building number 7 descended in free fall for the first 100 feet, which means that there was absolutely no resistance to the descent whatsoever.
NIST has admitted it went into free fall for 8 stories. And going from motionless to free fall instantly, that's a bothersome part of the puzzle because NIST never explained it.
We've got a building that came down in its own footprint, so all of the columns really needed to be severed at the same time in order for that structure to fall the way that we saw.
The symmetry is the smoking gun.
The whole building completely comes down in one continuous motion. There couldn't have been any structural resistance.
According to NIST, the failure occurred at column 79 on level 12. They're talking about a single columnar collapse or failure that resulted in a total collapse of the building.
It is possible that you could have a local failure as a result of a connection failing. But the likelihood of that failure dragging the entire building in such a fashion that all the columns would fail at the same time is an impossibility.
Impossibility?
Yes.
What I saw, it was a classic implosion. The center of the core, the penthouse area, starts to move first, and then the building follows along with it.
I'd like to know why NIST excluded the document from FEMA in Appendix C that documented the evidence of melting steel. Why is this forensic evidence not being included in the report?
In an office fire, you cannot generate enough heat to melt steel. And yet we have evidence of molten iron. R.J. Lee Company, USGS, and Dr. Stephen Jones's work, all three separately found these microspheres.
In the dust, we found what we characterize as unreacted thermitic material in the shape of some very tiny red-gray chips, which have different properties, and in the reaction they produce molten iron, which is the prime indication of a thermitic reaction. And such a reaction can be used to destroy steel structures. What we have found is a modern version of thermite, which we call nanothermite.
There were these iron microspheres present in all of the dust samples that needed to have been formed in extremely high temperatures.
I've independently seen thermitic activity within 2 separate independent samples of World Trade Center dust. My contention, based on finding thermite residue in the dust, is that it happened before. It didn't happen after in the fires that ensued in the rubble pile afterwards. All the characteristics of the microspheres tell me that thermite was involved in melting those steel beams.
So thermite, if it was present at the World Trade Center and created this molten metal that so many witnesses and photographic evidence shows, would also explain the fact that the fires could not be put out at Ground Zero.
The only thing that is consistent with all of the evidence that we have that could cause such a thing is the use of thermite to cut through the steel.
You'd get down below and you'd see molten steel, a little
molten steel running down the channel rails. Like you're in a foundry. Like lava. Like lava. Volcano.
Well, the manual gets into thermite, and if it says if you have melted steel or concrete, which we had on 9/11, we should test for it.
It's this fused element of steel, molten steel and concrete and all of these things all fused by the heat into one single element.
We're asking for an investigation that follows national standards. There's no excuse to not test for this. If terrorists use explosives in 93, why didn't we test for them? If all these witnesses heard explosions, why aren't we testing for them?
NIST concedes that they found no evidence for explosives. So then we asked them, well, did you look? And they said, no, we did not look for explosives or residues of explosives.
So the preconceived notion of NIST is that there's no evidence for explosives, and so there's no point in looking. That is the most unscientific thing that you can possibly think of, not to look because you don't expect to find evidence, and in fact the evidence is overwhelming. They state these conclusions for which there's virtually no evidence, and then they ignore conclusions that can be drawn from the evidence.
The Freedom of Information Act request to NIST was denied with the claim that releasing this data might jeopardize public safety. How could it possibly jeopardize public safety?
The destruction of evidence was a criminal act in itself. It was already being carted away and destroyed when the FEMA investigators got there about a month after September 11th.
You can't do science when you are deprived of the evidence and when your hypothesis is the least valid instead of the most likely. When the most likely hypothesis in the case of Building 7 wasn't even mentioned. This is not science.
The scientific forensic evidence, ignored by NIST, but carefully reviewed by teams of technical professionals, corroborates the hypothesis of explosive controlled demolition. We traveled to 21 foreign countries and 32 American cities, bringing this evidence to the attention of the public. And we're backed by 9/11 family members and other concerned citizens who are calling for an independent, unbiased investigation.
I'm a family member trying to find out the answers to the murder of 3,000 plus people. The bottom line is that it needs to be investigated properly.
Please look at architects and engineers. People all around the world, scientists all around the world are questioning this. And there's some deep, deep explaining to do.
It took some kind of consciousness raising on my part before I was willing to look at the possibilities. And really, you need to go where the evidence leads.
As an engineer, I have 3 degrees in engineering. I signed that petition for architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth some time ago because the American people absolutely need the truth of 9/11.
Look at the evidence. In fact, I'll say this very categorically. Any reasonable person who looks at the evidence that's been brought forward has got to come away with the feeling that something has to be done, a real investigation has to be put forward.
We will never heal. This country will never, ever, ever forget that day. We have to demand a new investigation. I want justice here.
The country owns this. We were all victims. You all should want answers. It's not just ours, not just mine. We all lost something that day.
It's distressing for everyone to come to terms with this evidence, but we must pursue the truth wherever it leads. Look at the evidence and decide for yourself.
Yeah, let's talk.
Okay. Okay, so now, everyone in this room, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, look at all that there. But what's going forward now with the Rethink 9/11? And you don't believe that there'll ever be an investigation, but, you know, go ahead.
I'm saying if there was an investigation, then everything we talk about would that be over because
You know, it would bring everything down. The whole house of cards would fall if the general populace understood what had happened and how it's been covered up and who was behind it and all that. So I really, as we stand now, our government, the present government, whatever that is, whoever's running it, they're not going to investigate. It's never going to happen. My opinion. You know, it'd be nice if it was. But I'm still intent on stripping the blinders off of people and having people become alert and watch out, you know, and also.
This is a great tool.
And
It's a
also,
short tool.
for those who are aware of this, you become aware of 9/11, then you become aware of New World Order and Agenda 21 and poisoning, fluoridation, chemtrails, the medical, the pharmaceuticals, the unending wars. You become aware of the eugenics agenda. You become aware of all of these things, and if you're going around like this and you know nothing of that, like you know so many people are, nothing's ever going to happen. But when those blinders come off, you begin thinking about this, and you can talk to other people, and maybe out of all the more and more people who are figuring this out, because it's happening all the time, more and more, every day is figuring this out, that we'll put our heads together, or out of somebody, somewhere, maybe a solution will arise. I don't have any answer. My only answer right now is to educate, you know, to alert people and get them to drop their fairy tale, you know, a version of the world. And hopefully, you know, we can come up with something. You know, because as we grow the brain that's addressing to all these overarching problems, maybe, so.
Well, I've got a couple other things. Just today alone, Mark Levin, who a lot of people, you know, he's on talk radio. He has an amazingly large audience, and a lot of people think he's a patriot. He had Conspiracy Day, and a young man had called in the Air Force, and he was talking about UFO type stuff, you know, or the fact that there's life forces other places. Well, then the first thing Levin said was, okay, wait a second now. What do you think happened on 9/11? Was it Osama bin Laden? That's like the litmus test of if you're a conspiracy freak and you know, like that. So he's a big proponent, but surely he knows the truth. So.
Oh, Levin know the truth?
Mark Levin.
Is it?
I mean.
As bad as Michael Medved?
Well, Michael Medved does the same thing, doesn't he? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, he does Conspiracy Day too, yeah.
So he has conspiracy. No, yeah, this was Levin today. Yeah, but Medved. No, it was Medved. You're absolutely right. It was Medved. No. Okay. So now all the years that you've been doing this in the Dallas area, and these talk radio guys that are twisting the minds of people, and has anything been done to kind of go after them and expose them for being instruments?
The people, the controlled media.
Yes. But this is controlled conservative media.
Yeah, well, what is happening is people are realizing that that's all bullshit. That's bullshit. This is bullshit. We're just being told bullshit. And anything that reaches a certain level, you know, any kind of broadcast or mainstream or anything like that, people are figuring out that that's bullshit. I'm not going to watch it anymore. I'm looking deeper. You know, and people are abandoning the mainstream for alternatives. And, you know, of course, a lot of alternatives are controlled just as well.
That's what I'm saying, because he'd be considered alternative media.
But
you know,
you keep going, and, you know, people begin to look deeper and deeper. They're not satisfied with this Michael Medved, you know, the bullshit.
But what about Ed Asner? I mean, it's great that he came out. I remember that. Did he drop the ball? Did he go undercover? What happened with him? Do y'all know?
I really haven't heard. It's like he just
That's what I
kind of
wondered.
disappeared after that.
I don't know these things. I haven't watched. What do you? That's what you said.
Does
Yeah.
anybody know the original 9/11
He's old.
video that we had for 2 hours where the engineers talk about it, the pilots talk about it, the original one?
What
It
about
was
it?
2 hours.
Yeah.
9/11?
Yes.
There was 2 hour video.
Right. What about
Does anybody know the website to it?
I have it.
Can I get it?
Yeah.
I have the 9/11 ripple effect, and I'm not gonna ask permission, I'm just gonna make a copy and pass it on.
Yeah.
I've got a 3-disc set, 3 DVD disc set that is over 5 hours, and we're giving away copies to anybody who wants it tonight.
I'd love to have some.
So I'm gonna.
This new gentleman might have a question.
Yes, sir.
I just want to mention something that's might be used for comparison purposes. I believe the year was 46 or 47 in Manhattan. a 4-engine aircraft, I think it was a bomber possibly, flew into the Empire State Building, and it just stayed there, perpendicular to the building, parallel to the ground, and nothing like we saw here at all.
But
No
there-
fires or anything.
It was a B-25.
A B-25?
Yeah. Yeah, there were fires. Medium bomber. But
Yeah,
it burned.
they were selling souvenir pieces of glass at the time all over the place.
What I want to do now is, I think very few of us here have seen this. This is based upon the research of a guy named Kevin Ryan, who was with Underwriters Laboratory, and the story was that Underwriters Laboratory says, we never tested that steel. And he came back and said, well, but you did test that steel, and the test results, you finagled the results and tweaked them till you got what you wanted it to say. He blew the whistle on Underwriters Laboratories, and as a result got fired. But since that time, he's done a tremendous amount of research in all areas, and this will get into kind of like who's who in the
Carter
conspiracy.
has a question here, her labor asked.
Yeah.
Two things to add. Number one, if you think that it's a coincidence that when all this happened, the Patriot Act was pushed through, when everybody in this country who had half a brain would have never passed that. And number two, it was the biggest onslaught of personal invasion, and that's when it all started. You gotta wake up.
Hey, I don't think that.
Exactly. The other thing is, hang on, the other thing is, I heard it on the James Corbett report this morning. James Corbett, the Corbett report, he said, I forget, it wasn't Boeing, it was another company that's doing testing on piloting large, like 747 type planes, and he said that there was no way that a human being made that last final turn into the tower.
Oh, of course not. But let's watch this, because this has got mind-bending information.
There we go.
When the global economy crashed in 2008, costing tens of millions of people their savings, their jobs, and their homes, the bankers who caused the crisis did not get arrested, they did not go to jail, and they did not have to pay any money out of their own filthy rich pockets. Instead, they got bailed out, and everyone else had to pay for it. This corrupt network of elite financial criminals has infested itself into the top levels of the U.S. government, military, business, and intelligence sectors. These people are the reason why the price of everything you buy has skyrocketed since just 10 or 15 years ago. The reason why empty homes now outnumber the homeless in America, and the reason why the national debt doubled. In another non-coincidence, it was also about that long ago that another event happened which divided history forever into an unforgettable before and after period. As it turns out, many of the same people involved in the economic inside job that crashed our economy and led to those banker bailouts were also involved in another inside job. In this video, we are going to blow the 9/11 conspiracy wide open. I began this investigation after seeing the documentary 9/11 Press for Truth and hearing about the 4 widows who lost their husbands on 9/11 and had to put immense political pressure on Congress and the Bush administration to actually start an official inquiry into the 9/11 attacks. This eventually, over a year later, led to the formation of the 9/11 Commission, which the Bush administration did everything in its power to stall and avoid. The 9/11 Commission concluded its investigation prematurely and left over 70% of the victims' family members' questions about the attacks completely unanswered. I made this video for them and anyone else who lost loved ones that day, so that the truth behind their murders could be known and the perpetrators brought to justice. The information you are about to see is both shocking and disturbing, but it is essential to the reclamation of our democratic republic from the hands of tyrants. If we don't address this information now, it's only going to get worse and worse. This is what a real 9/11 investigation might have uncovered if they had just bothered to look in the right places. In September 1991, shortly after the end of the Cold War, a cabal of elite bankers and intelligence spooks led by George H.W. Bush financed a $240 billion covert operations war chest through the purchase of 10-year securities that, as it happened, were scheduled to come due on September 12, 2001. Project Hammer was undoubtedly used for a wide variety of illicit intelligence operations, but mainly it was used to finance a covert economic operation against the collapsing Soviet Union, whereby unknown Western investors bought up much of the Soviet industry with a focus on oil and gas, crashing the Russian economy, looting its central bank, orchestrating what became known as the Great Ruble Scam, and a wide variety of other clandestine, state-assisted operations designed to thoroughly prevent Russia from ever contesting the U.S. as a world superpower. While in the process lining the pockets of these economic hitmen who swooped in to devour the collapsing Russian economy after the fall of the Soviet Union. A spectacular investment for all, at least until money laundering investigations began tracing all the money, or when the 10-year deadline came up and the securities became due and began the routine process of authenticity and ownership checks. Evidence shows that several federal and private investigations had already stumbled upon the Hammer Fund and were compiling evidence on it up until the 9/11 attacks. These included the Office of Naval Intelligence, or ONI, which was moved to the outer E-ring of the recently renovated section of the Pentagon that was targeted and destroyed on 9/11. According to E.P. Heidner, the ONI had been investigating crimes associated with the plundering of Russia. 39 out of the 40 people who worked in those offices were killed on 9/11, including the entire chain of command. The Pentagon's financial accounting offices in that same wing were also an obvious target, as were the passengers on board Flight 77, many of whom coincidentally held top-secret clearances and were connected with Pentagon black operations. Agents of the Office of Naval Intelligence had also been investigating financial transactions which were linked to securities being managed by those securities dealers in the World Trade Center that were also targeted. 31% of the 125 fatalities in the Pentagon were from the Naval Command Center that housed the Office of Naval Intelligence. 41% of the fatalities in the Twin Towers came from two companies that managed U.S. government securities, Cantor Fitzgerald and Eurobrokers. There were three major security brokers in the World Trade Center, Cantor Fitzgerald, Eurobrokers, and Garvin Intercapital. At 8:46 on the morning of September 11th, Flight 11 flew directly into Marshall McLennan's secure computer room in the North Tower, right below the floor on which Cantor Fitzgerald was situated. Cantor Fitzgerald was the largest security dealer in the U.S. Shortly after that, a massive explosion went off just under the FBI offices in the North Tower on the 23rd floor. Fires were reported on the 22nd floor at 8:47. There were also explosions and subsequent fires reported at Garvin Intercapital on the 25th floor and in the basement of Tower 1 as well. Shortly thereafter, at 9:03, Flight 175 hit the South Tower right below the floors on which Eurobrokers was situated. In all three cases, the explosive, fiery destruction consumed the offices and the several floors above, destroying files and trapping victims inside. In the midst of all this, Building 6 was destroyed by an explosion that took place before either tower fell. This secondary explosion took out a portion of the building which just happened to include the El Dorado Task Force's offices. The El Dorado Task Force was an interagency money laundering watchdog group responsible for coordinating all major money laundering investigations in the U.S. In the immediate aftermath of September 11th, these groups would be redirected to investigate terrorist financing. Building 6 was located directly between the North Tower and World Trade Center Building 7. While large portions of World Trade Center 6 were gutted by explosions and later by falling debris from the North Tower, the building itself did not suffer a global symmetric collapse at near freefall acceleration as did Buildings 1, 2, and 7. FEMA photographer and 9/11 whistleblower Kurt Sonnenfeld took some interesting pictures of the U.S. Customs Vault in the basement of World Trade Center 6, which was found completely empty and left with the door wide open. All of its contents appear to have been looted during the attacks. There is also evidence that gold was being looted from the vaults beneath World Trade Center 4. There were several early reports of a 10-wheel truck packed with stolen bullion caught fleeing World Trade Center 5 when the vehicle had become stuck on a collapsed ceiling brace, forcing the driver to flee the scene. Many researchers have stumbled across one or two of these anomalies from time to time: the empty vaults, the secondary explosions, the fireproofing upgrades on the exact floors coinciding with failure and impact in the towers, the suspicious power downs and evacuation drills, the World Trade Center tenants and security firms like AIG, Marsh & McLennan, and Kroll, and their close ties with the intelligence community, etc., etc. These anomalies are not unrelated, but nevertheless became lost inside the chaos of that September morn, the aftermath and subsequent cover-ups. Okay, so what does all this mean? Overall, a critical mass of brokers from the major government security brokerages in the Twin Towers had to be eliminated to create chaos in the government securities market. A situation needed to be created wherein $240 billion of covert securities could be electronically cleared without anyone asking questions, which happened when the Federal Reserve declared an emergency and invoked its emergency powers that very afternoon. On September 14th, the Securities and Exchange Commission declared a national emergency and for the first time in U.S. history invoked its emergency powers under the Securities Exchange Act Section 12K and eased regulatory restrictions for clearing and settling security trades for the next 15 days. These changes would have allowed the estimated $240 billion in covert government securities to be cleared upon maturity without the standard regulatory controls around identification of ownership. The towers needed to be demolished to create a big enough mess that the illicit activities taking place behind the scenes that morning could be hidden in the confusion of that day. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about who did it and how. 9/11 whistleblower Richard Andrew Grove was a software salesperson for a company called Silverstream. Silverstream's technology was on the cutting edge of internet solutions, offering software to web-enable the critical business functions of Fortune 500 companies, basically integrating and making available on the web the disparate legacy applications and mainframes while simultaneously streamlining workflow and traditional paper processes, with an end result being a lower cost of operation and more efficient transactions. Silverstream had built internet transactional and trading platforms for Merrill Lynch, Deutsche Bank, Bankers Trust, Alex Brown, and Morgan Stanley, to name a few. Leading up to 9/11, Silverstream was designing specialized accounting software for a major client, Marsh & McLennan. Marsh is the world's largest insurance brokerage and is located right below Cantor Fitzgerald in the North Tower. Approximately 295 Marsh employees were murdered that morning, along with other innocent victims and employees who either knew too much or too little about their chosen work environment. But most importantly, Silverstream provided a specific type of connectivity that was used to link AIG and Marsh & McLennan, the first two commercial companies on the planet to employ this type of transaction. What then were Marsh and AIG doing, and why did they need to leverage technologies that no other commercial entity on the face of the earth needed to use to conduct business? The recovered hard drives from the World Trade Center, combined with Richard Grove's testimony, give us some intriguing clues. Grove discovered that Silverstream was overbilling Marsh to the tune of $7 million extra for fictitious and unneeded hardware. He also became aware of an exploitable flaw in the accounting software that had been sold to a variety of Marsh's clients and partners. When he brought this up to his superiors at Silverstream and others at Marsh, he was told to keep quiet and not to worry about it. But other friends of his at Marsh were also getting concerned and began documenting what was going on and raising concerns within the company. At last, they were finally granted a hearing with one of Marsh's high-ranking executives and were told to bring all their evidence to a hearing scheduled for 8:30 a.m. on September 11, 2001, on the 93rd floor. The high-ranking member of Marsh, who Grove did not name, would participate via teleconference from the safety of his home, while Marsh employees and potential whistleblowers, Gary Lasko, Catherine Lee, Ken Rice, Richard Brewhart, and John Oltzhofer, would die in the meeting room in the North Tower with all their evidence when American Airlines Flight 11 would impact that very section of the building. Richard Grove fortunately got stuck in traffic that morning and didn't make it. Computer hard drives recovered from the World Trade Center show a spike in suspicious transfers that took place within the World Trade Center as the 9/11 attacks were unfolding. Richard Grove is convinced that these suspicious money transfers were performed electronically using Silverstream software, and that the overbilling of Marsh was hush money for the operations. It would certainly have helped clear up that $240 billion in securities and make it look like any of those companies might have done it. The recovered hard drives and financial transactions from 9/11 all show clear evidence that something was going on that morning. Marsh's CEO at the time was Jeffrey Greenberg, the son of Maurice Greenberg of AIG. Most insurance companies were hurting badly in late 2001 after $40 billion in insurance settlements had been paid out for the devastation caused by the 9/11 attacks. Yet one insurance company did not suffer quite the same losses as the other companies did. American International Group, or AIG as it turns out, is much more than an insurance company. With its long ties to the intelligence community, AIG was founded by OSS operative Cornelius V. Starr, 2 R's, the uncle of Clinton's friend Kenneth Starr. AIG currently operates a complex network of shell companies and other entities which operate internationally and have been used for clandestine intelligence gathering and other covert activities for decades. The company that ran security in the World Trade Center, Kroll Associates, was owned by AIG. The CEO of AIG on 9/11 was a guy named Morris Greenberg, who was actually nominated for the position of Director of Central Intelligence after he authored a report for the Council on Foreign Relations, of which he's a high-ranking member, where he advocated that FBI and Drug Enforcement Agency agents operating abroad should not be allowed to act independently of either the ambassador or the CIA, lest pursuit of evidence or individuals for prosecution cause major foreign policy problems or complicate ongoing intelligence and diplomatic activities. Of course, this type of policy is essentially a continuation of things like Executive Order 12333 and the CIA-assisted Contra cocaine trafficking that went on as an immediate result. These backdoor agreements open the floodgates for government drug money laundering and narco-trafficking. Former LAPD narcotics detective turned whistleblower Michael Rupert has written a series of excellent articles documenting AIG's involvement in drug money laundering, undoubtedly revealing yet another motive for the invasion of Afghanistan, a country which currently produces over 90% of the world's heroin supply. Drugs are arguably the most profitable commodity on the entire international market, and drug money was undoubtedly a motive behind the invasion of Afghanistan and consequently the 9/11 attacks. While companies like AIG launder the drug money for big banks, the actual drug production and trafficking can be traced back to the same Iran-Contra affiliates like Richard Armitage and Frank Carlucci. Unfortunately, that rabbit hole is a bit too deep and off-topic to get into here. I will mention that DynCorp was heavily involved, as well as Stewart Air Force Base in upstate New York, where the two flights out of Boston crossed paths simultaneously and shut off their transponders before making their way to the Twin Towers. Many researchers believe that the MENA operation was moved to Stewart Air Force Base after Barry Seal got whacked. Richard Armitage was the Deputy Secretary of State on 9/11, and according to whistleblower Michael Springman, he was the man responsible for granting visas to 15 out of 19 of the 9/11 hijackers, allowing them to enter the U.S. and pursue flight training. Frank Carlucci is the chairman of the Carlyle Group and was in Washington, D.C. on 9/11, having just met with George H.W. Bush and the brother of Osama bin Laden on Carlyle Group business. Frank Carlucci was also the chairman of BDM International, a company that served as a front for State Department black operations. Frank Carlucci's employees at BDM International left to take charge of Stratesec, the World Trade Center and airport security firm. Corporate Operating Officer Barry W. McDaniel, an ex-military expert in logistics and materials distribution, and CEO Wirt Dexter Walker III, who is a distant Bush cousin from the Herbert Walker line, with an extensive history of managing CIA front companies. Marvin Bush, the president's brother, was also a board member at Stratesec. Although Stratesec maintained contracts for security upgrades which were set to expire on September 11, 2001, they were not the company officially charged with World Trade Center security. This role was assigned to a risk management firm called Kroll Associates. The World Trade Center security system itself was designed by a guy named Brian Michael Jenkins, who also happened to be a Rand Corporation advisor. Kroll's chairman, Jerome Hauer, was a longtime personal friend of ex-FBI counterterrorism expert John O'Neill and was responsible for O'Neill's appointment as head of security for the World Trade Center just a few days prior to the 9/11 attacks. O'Neill was the world's leading expert on Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda and was a potential 9/11 whistleblower with hard evidence of White House complicity in the protection and shielding of the 9/11 hijackers from all means of federal investigation. Al-Qaeda hijacking suspects were flagged by the Able Danger terrorist tracking program, which was also shut down by the White House. Able Danger whistleblower Anthony Schaefer claims the U.S. government destroyed over 6 terabytes of data related to Able Danger, which he also claims identified 9/11 ringleader Mohammed Atta as early as February of 2000. Those atop the chain of command in the White House, military, and intelligence establishment deliberately ignored all the warning signs of an impending attack. A clever strategy of plausible deniability which also served to portray those in charge as incompetent rather than complicit. In every major head throughout the chain of command on 9/11, from NORAD to the military, we see a repeated theme of complicity through negligence or incompetence. After 9/11, failure and incompetence was rewarded and whistleblowers were silenced. Combined with the fact that 6 corporations control 90% of the media and CIA operations like Mockingbird admit to taking over and subverting our U.S. media, we can understand how such a big lie could have been kept from the American public for so long. But if you stop and take the time to do your research, you'll find all the evidence is there, hidden beneath a mountain of disinfo and lies.
It's been 10 years since 9/11 happened, and we are left with hundreds, if not thousands, of unanswered questions about the 9/11 attacks. A transparently fraudulent 9/11 Commission report, which purposely failed to even mention the collapse of World Trade Center 7, and a host of ridiculous so-called debunking websites, forums, and other literature, which have done absolutely nothing over the past 10 years to debunk anything other than cleverly selected strawman arguments, and have failed to stem the constant flow of new 9/11 information, which researchers have been uncovering and bringing out to the public. Instead, they continue to label truth seekers, including family members of people who died on 9/11, as conspiracy theorists, and devise clever propaganda designed to prevent the general public from looking any further into the evidence or the actual claims of the so-called conspiracy theorists. In this video, we will take a deeper look into the so-called investigations, which have provided us with the official story, and why they deserve a more thorough examination.
The Bush administration initially stalled the 9/11 investigation for over 400 days.
A week after 9/11, letters containing anthrax spores were mailed to several news media offices and 2 senators who were perhaps a bit too vocal about opening an official investigation into 9/11. The anthrax used in the attacks was identified as an Ames strain, which means it had to have come from the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases at Fort Detrick, Maryland. A member of that institute, Jerome Hauer, managed the National Institute of Health response to the anthrax attacks. Coincidentally, Hauer also warned the White House to start taking Cipro, an antibiotic which is effective against anthrax, a week before the attacks. Jerome Hauer also happened to be a managing director at Kroll Associates, which ran security at the World Trade Center up until the weekend before 9/11, when that role was personally handed off by Hauer to FBI agent John O'Neill, who would later die in the attacks, drawing strong suspicion that he was set up due to his knowledge of Al-Qaeda and the 9/11 hijackers, whom he was blocked from investigating while he was working at the FBI. In January 2002, President Bush personally asked Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle to limit the congressional investigation into the events of September 11th. The Bush administration only formed the 9/11 Commission after being prodded by the victims' families, who lobbied Congress for over a year to open the investigations. When the Bush administration finally did open a 9/11 investigation, it was described by some members as set up to fail.
The president has said only a minority of the commission can see a minority of the documents, and then they have to clear what they're going to say to the rest of the commission with the White House.
If you're one of those 4 that gets to see these documents, would that change your opinion?
No. They don't want any more eyeballs to see their documents than they could possibly get away with. It's a scam. It's absolutely disgusting.
They even attempted to appoint Henry Kissinger, a known cover-up mastermind, as head commissioner. He resigned after victims' family members asked him sensitive questions about his connections to the bin Laden family and the Carlyle Group. Philip Zelikow wrote the conclusions for the report before the investigation ever began, and even then, any areas which did not support the official story were neither mentioned nor investigated by the 9/11 Commission. 6 out of 10 members of that commission have discussed on record how the government lied about the official story, and 70% of the questions posed by the victims' families were never answered or officially investigated. It's important to look at what happened to the evidence from 9/11. The day of 9/11, most of the FBI was in Monterey, California on an agency retreat.
Let's go to our State Department correspondent, Andrea Mitchell. Andrea, what can you tell us?
Well, this from the FBI. The State Department has been evacuated. There was a meeting going on in the Operations Center. Other top officials were in the Situation Room at the White House. Colin Powell is in Bogota, Colombia, on a 2-day trip. But this very interesting information, Katie, Matt, and Tom, from the FBI, they had been operating a massive exercise from their hostage rescue unit. All of their top teams, about 50 personnel, helicopters, equipment, were in Monterey, California for the last 2 days, scheduled to fly back today commercially. So all of those people are out of place. It's fair to say, according to sources that we've talked to here at NBC, that the FBI rescue operations and other FBI operations are really in chaos right now because they can't reach their officials in New York all of their phone lines are down, and now you've got all of their special experts on this stuck in Monterey, California, trying to get a military flight back because there are no longer commercial flights. So they are seriously out of pocket, and there is a real breakdown of the FBI anti-terror coordination team, which is, of course, the principal team that would lead any effort and was so effective under Jim Costrom in New York City during the World Trade Center bombing and the TWA explosion, which, of course, turned out not to be terror. Andrea, is the State Department...
This was essential for keeping the more experienced and honest members of the agency as far away from the crime scene as possible, while other agency insiders could be assigned to the investigations before their counterparts returned. Federal authorities such as FEMA and the CIA took immediate control over the crime scene and began whisking away evidence that very same night. Turner Construction, one of the primary contractors at Ground Zero, occupied the 38th floor of the North Tower and was involved in performing the fireproofing upgrades inside the towers. It has been noted that these upgrades were completed in the 3 years before 9/11 on floors that match up almost identically to the floors of impact and failure on 9/11. Once the cleanup was fully coordinated, the operations were consolidated under the control of two primary contractors, AMEC Construction Management and Bovis Lend-Lease. These are the two companies that were originally assigned to the areas of Ground Zero that included the North Tower, AMEC, and the South Tower, Bovis. A truly surprising fact is that at the time of the attacks on 9/11, AMEC had just completed a $258 million refurbishment of Wedge 1 of the Pentagon, which is exactly where American Airlines Flight 77 impacted that building. Arguments over the size of the hole of the Pentagon and whether it was a plane or a missile are, in my opinion, a convenient distraction from the much bigger picture of why that section of the building was targeted and by whom. On September 10, 2001, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld announced that $2.3 trillion in unadjusted funds were missing from the Pentagon budget. The very next day, the offices whose responsibility it was for tracking that money down were destroyed when American Airlines Flight 77 impacted that very section of the building. The only off-site backup for the Pentagon's black budget financial records was a secure federal office building in the World Trade Center complex. Strangely, it too was destroyed on 9/11. World Trade Center 7 was the largest CIA headquarters outside of Langley, Virginia, and housed offices involved in several large-scale federal investigations into massive stock market and accounting fraud. Not surprisingly, World Trade Center 7 was the first to be cleaned up and the evidence destroyed at Ground Zero.
So if 9/11 was really an inside job, then let's take a look at some of the people inside the buildings that were targeted and destroyed on 9/11.
In the impact zone of the North Tower was a company called Marsh & McLennan, which at the time was the world's largest insurance brokerage company. One of Marsh's executives was a guy named L. Paul Bremer, who was also the chairman of the Congressional National Commission on Terrorism from 1999 to 2000, and the U.S. ambassador at large for counterterrorism from 1986 to 1989. Instead of going to work on the day of 9/11 and dying inside the towers with hundreds of his employees, Bremer decided to go on MSNBC and tell the world that Osama bin Laden was behind the attacks and possibly Iraq and Iran. And then he demanded
the most severe military response we can come up with.
L. Paul Bremer was called away from Marsh in 2003 to become the Iraq occupation governor, a role he has been widely criticized for. So Bremer not only worked inside the buildings, but had offices directly in the impact zone of the South Tower where Flight 175 would hit. He missed work on 9/11 to give us the official story on national television and went on to be the Iraq occupation governor. You really can't get more connected to 9/11 than that. Oh wait, you can, sorry. I forgot to mention that Bremer was also the former manager for Kissinger Associates. He was a member of the board for Akzo Nobel, the parent of International Paint Company, which produced a fireproofing application for skyscrapers called Interchar. Bremer was also on the International Advisory Board for the Japanese mining and machinery company Komatsu, which at the time had been involved in a joint venture agreement with Dresser Industries, the oil services intelligence front where Prescott Bush Sr. and George H.W. Bush got their start with Neil Mellon. Anyway, the Komatsu Dresser mining division operated from 1988 to 1997, and in July 1996 it patented a nanothermite demolition device that could, quote, demolish a concrete structure at high efficiency while preventing a secondary problem due to noise, flying chips and dust, and the like. As many of you know, residues of thermite, a highly energetic chemical mixture, have been confirmed in samples of World Trade Center dust, and the use of thermite at the World Trade Center was also revealed by environmental data. See the description for more links and sources. Scientific Applications International Corporation, a defense contractor with expertise in thermite-related technologies, played a large part in the NIST World Trade Center investigation. A few other names and companies inside the Twin Towers also worthy of further investigation include Craig Stapleton, who is married to Bush's cousin Dorothy Walker Bush. Stapleton was the president of Marsh Real Estate Advisors from 1982 to 2001. He was a member of the board of directors for Cendant, that was charged with massive accounting fraud in 1998, and went on to join Winston Partners, a privately owned investment firm founded in 1993 and led by George W. Bush's brother Marvin. Other very powerful and well-connected people worked in senior management at Marsh. These included Stephen Friedman, a senior principal at Marsh Capital and former partner at Goldman Sachs, who later became George W. Bush's top economic advisor. Friedman was also a member of the Brookings Institution, the Bilderberg Group, the Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board, and the board at In-Q-Tel, the investment firm founded by the CIA in 1998. In-Q-Tel invests in state-of-the-art technologies related to defense and intelligence work, including nano and chemical technologies, according to its website. In another interesting coincidence, Friedman belonged through Cornell University to a secret society called Quill and Dagger, the membership of which includes Paul Wolfowitz, Sandy Berger, and Stephen Hadley. Wolfowitz, the neocon Deputy Secretary of Defense in the Bush administration, was the author in 1992 of the Wolfowitz Doctrine of preemptive warfare. He also made comments about a surprise-like Pearl Harbor months before 9/11 and met with Pakistani ISI General Mahmoud Ahmed in the week before 9/11. Berger, the national security advisor to President Clinton, was later caught stealing documents from the 9/11 Commission investigation. Berger was also the boss of White House counterterrorism czar Richard Clarke, and together with Hadley, who was Condoleezza Rice's deputy, was responsible for delaying or obstructing Clarke's plans to stop al-Qaeda in January of 2001. Jeffrey Greenberg resigned from Marsh & McLennan after being accused of serious financial crimes. The first plane of 9/11 flew directly into his company's secure computer room in the North Tower. Jeffrey Greenberg is a member of the Brookings Institution and the Trilateral Commission. Jeffrey Greenberg rose quickly through management at Marsh, having come there directly from AIG in 1995, and then becoming CEO just 4 years later. At Brookings, Greenberg hobnobbed with Lee Hamilton, co-chair of the 9/11 Commission. There's also Jim Pierce, another Bush cousin, who was managing director of Aon Corporation, who, according to the NIST report, modified unknown sections of Floor 83 in the South Tower in 1997. Jim Pierce had arranged a meeting on the 105th floor of the South Tower for that morning. Pierce survived that day, despite the fact that 12 people came to the meeting in the South Tower and 11 of them died. The location of the meeting had been changed the night before to the Millennium Hotel, where Pierce watched the South Tower as it was hit by the aircraft. Apparently, the meeting attendees were not all notified of the change in location. Another interesting character is Joseph Kasputis, of Baseline Financial Service, which occupied the impact zone of the South Tower on floors 77 and 78, where United Airlines 175 impacted. Kasputis has a history of being well connected to the highest levels of government, as well as to the defense and intelligence industries. Kasputis worked from 1972 to 1977 for the U.S. Department of Commerce and Defense. He was also the deputy director of Nixon's White House task force that dealt with the Arab oil embargo of 1973, and was instrumental in the creation of the Department of Energy. Kasputis went on to run a large corporation called Primark that had offices in both towers on 9/11. One of the subsidiaries of Primark, the Analytical Sciences Corporation, TASC, worked with so-called black or top-secret programs. TASC also worked closely with the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Kasputis was also a member of the Logistics Management Institute, LMI, whose members included Paul Kaminsky of In-Q-Tel and General Dynamics, Charles DiBona of Halliburton, Skull and Bones member Joseph Samuel Nye, and Michael Daniels of Scientific Applications International Corporation. LMI's self-proclaimed role is advancing the science of government. Kasputis' connections to the DOE from 1977 through at least 1997 are interesting, considering that the DOE was developing thermite ignition devices as early as 1983. Joseph Kasputis went on to become the CEO of Baseline Financial Services, which was directly in the impact zone on the 78th floor of the South Tower. According to NIST, Kasputis' Baseline Financial modified the southeast corner of floor 78 in 1999. exactly where the aircraft hit on 9/11. Floors 77 and 78 were upgraded for fireproofing in June and April of 1998, respectively. Another company of interest on floor 91, just above the impact zone for the South Tower, was Washington Group International. This company was known primarily as a construction and mining firm, and it had just acquired Raytheon Engineers in July of 2000. In 1996, Washington took over Morrison Knudsen, an engineering and construction firm that had a history of working on large-scale projects around the world, including in China, Iran, Afghanistan, and Saudi Arabia. The Army Corps of Engineers hired Morrison Knudsen to demolish over 200 buildings in 1995. One of the DOE facilities for which Washington was responsible well before 9/11 was the Savannah River site near Aiken, South Carolina. In February of 1997, Lawrence Livermore National Labs and the Savannah River site signed an agreement of cooperation to share technology. Savannah went on to add developing sol gel technology for fuels and other applications to its portfolio. Sol gel technology is utilized by Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories for making nanothermites. In another coincidence, Savannah River Technology staff participated in the search and rescue operations at Ground Zero by providing unique tools. Just before 9/11, Washington was going through a tough time financially and sought Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Securities and Exchange Commission documents show that Washington made court-ordered pre-petition payments as part of these proceedings to a number of companies, including Komatsu. Washington also made payments to Greenhorn and Omara, whose employee, Teresa McAllister, was a lead author of the FEMA and NIST reports on the World Trade Center disaster, and to Sumitomo Bank, which was closely allied with Komatsu. Building 7 was a 47-story federal office building in the World Trade Center site, which collapsed at 5:20 p.m. on the afternoon of 9/11. This building was home to the CIA, in fact, the largest CIA headquarters outside of Langley, Virginia. It also housed offices for the Secret Service and the Securities and Exchange Commission. One of the most interesting tenants, however, was then Mayor Giuliani's Office of Emergency Management and its Emergency Command Center on the 23rd floor. This floor received $15 million worth of renovations, including independent and secure air and water supplies, and bullet and bomb-resistant windows designed to withstand 200-mile-per-hour winds. Mayor Giuliani was a former U.S. prosecutor for the South District of New York from 1983 to 1989, who was in charge of investigating the terrorist financing Bank of Credit and Commerce International. After he left his job as a prosecutor to start a political career, he worked for a law firm called White & Case that actually represented BCCI. So he went from prosecuting the BCCI to working for a law firm which defended the BCCI. This was likely his foot in the door of this underground corporate criminal network. Giuliani would later help to destroy all the crime scene evidence from Ground Zero. Giuliani's sidekick on 9/11 was Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik, who appeared to be coaching some of Rudy's actions that day, keeping him away from the media and even answering questions for him about explosives in the buildings. In fact, Bernard Kerik gave us the first official government pronouncement that no explosives were involved in the destruction of the World Trade Center buildings. Kerik's department was also the same one that found that pristine, completely undamaged hijacker's passport, which survived the plane impact, and Fireball, which destroyed 2 titanium black boxes and 3 towers. Yeah. Kerik would later receive a nomination from President Bush to become Director of Homeland Security, which he declined for personal and political reasons, and instead took a job training the Iraqi police force in Iraq alongside L. Paul Bremer. Both men are credited for turning Iraq into the unwinnable quagmire it is today. In February of 2010, Kerik was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for conspiracy and fraud charges, unrelated to the crimes of 9/11, unfortunately, but it still goes to show you what kind of person he is. Definitely the kind of person you'd want inside the New York City police force during a staged event like 9/11. And lastly, we have the Pentagon. It's certainly peculiar, to say the least, that al-Qaeda terrorists hell-bent on destroying the USA would not crash their plane into the north wing of the Pentagon, where all the most important offices were, like Donald Rumsfeld, John Ashcroft, etc., and that they would instead choose to target the one section of the Pentagon that had most recently been refurbished to withstand missile impacts. It's also interesting to note that the company which completed the $258 million refurbishment to which one of the Pentagon was also hired as a contractor to clean up Ground Zero in New York City. Wedge 1 also coincidentally housed the Pentagon's Budget Analyst Office, where DoD staffers were working on the mystery of the $2.3 trillion that was reported missing by Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld in a press conference the day before 9/11. The Pentagon's comptroller in charge of that money at the time was an interesting fellow named Dov Zakheim, a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, the International Institute for Strategic Studies, and a contributor to the neocon think tank Project for the New American Century. Zakheim helped write the PNAC document Rebuilding America's Defenses, in which he is credited for the line which states, "Further, the process of transformation, even if it brings revolutionary change, is likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event, like a new Pearl Harbor." Several members of the Bush administration, including President Bush himself, would later refer to 9/11 as a new Pearl Harbor. If anything, the individuals and organizations outlined in this video are at least as suspicious as the 19 hijackers themselves.
Oh, yeah.
This investigation and the facts presented and outlined in this video are by no means comprehensive or complete. We need to continue the investigation into these people, these companies, and their close proximity to the events of 9/11, and not find ourselves continuously lost inside speculative, circumstantial evidence and arguments. It's time to demand justice and accountability for the victims who were killed on 9/11 and the illegal wars and occupations that were created as a result of these attacks. And whether you believe everything in this video or not, it should at least make you consider opening a new investigation into 9/11 that looks deeper into these individuals and their suspicious connections.
Anybody's head spinning?
It's not true. You can trust the U.S. government. They're looking out for us.
How about those Cowboys, huh?
There's a congressman, and his last name is Jones, and he's really, Congressman Jones?
Yeah, he's looking to get the 28 redacted pages from the commission. It's about the financing. They're suspecting that Saudi Arabia and Israel were involved in financing.
Well, the several congressmen have gotten to see those pages, but they're not allowed to write anything about them or take any, pictures or anything. So several of them are saying they need to declassify them. So what, Joe, update us on anything.
Oh, I don't know much more than that. I'm thinking
Are you
that.
Walt Jones of North Carolina?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got Walt Freedom Prize.
He's a good guy. Well, do we have some questions or comments for Joe? Or?
Where are you going to end up?
Okay, Hank?
Hank can speak.
Can I say something? Sure, Hank. Come up in front of the microphone there.
Want to reposition it up there?
Wait a minute.
That's good.
Okay. Well, this was interesting, very, very excellent presentation, and we've come into a new phase where we're not really trying to convince people anymore because they're psychological reasons. You're probably the people that will listen. So what do we do now? You asked the question. I don't think Joe answered directly about what the architects are doing now. The AE 911 made the second video, the one with Ed Asner. They are still very active, and I think they deserve our support. Although they might not get a decent investigation from the United States government, they are the most organized and largest, and they get funding and
Billboards. They put up those billboards.
Yeah, they did a lot of stuff here. They're still very active. They're actually doing a lot of stuff in Canada now, just because it's easier to operate there. There's less official resistance. So that answered your question a little bit. Yeah, they did stuff here in Dallas. Richard Gage was here, the head. We had billboards here. But the main thing is, what do we do with this information? Like you said, your head's spinning. You're now in high school, and there are other people who are not even in kindergarten. So you have to realize when they come up with their illogical, reflexive resistance to this, you've at least seen a high school course, even if you haven't assimilated it yet. some of us here are a little bit beyond that. And it's tough because there's so much reasons, motivation for people to shut you down. So realize who you're talking to when you're talking to them. Not to be snobbish, but maybe be one level above that. Like, be patient and communicate what you can. Architects need support. The one other thing I want to mention that's not mentioned in most of the mainstream stuff here is the pilots for 911 Truth.
That's right.
Pilots for 911 Truth have some stuff that's really heavy, like unbelievable stuff that should be in court. So why do these people have to do this? Why is the FBI not doing it? You know, why is the New York Police Department not doing it? The state of New York. Well, it's going to be easy if they ever get around to doing that, whatever. But like Joe said, you're either on the side of the truth or not. And we don't know how it's all going to shake out. Like Richard Gage says, let the cards fall where they may. So people say, well, what good is it? You know, you might lose your job. You're going to look like an idiot, you know, to all these people who think they know what reality is. Well, once you know the truth, you have to fall on one side or the other. So if you can, come to our meetings. There is at Barbeck's restaurant every Thursday we meet. And maybe we can get some more energy into this, something we can do locally again. What time? 7. Every Thursday at Barbeck's.
You usually have DVDs to give to people and stuff, don't you? Even at those meetings?
Right. Yeah, there's ongoing education. There's DVDs to give away. And, you know, it ebbs and flows. I mean, sometimes there's strong activist thrusts. Right now it seems like there's a lot of just trying to figure out what we're going to do next. But it's like keeping a little fire alive. And in all the stuff you saw, it's a fraction of what they have. And I'm just talking about the heavy stuff, not the speculative stuff.
Bob has a question for you, Hank.
Joe his opinion on the following. I was curious about the killing, or alleged killing of Osama bin Laden, because even if you do believe that it was an inside job, that's not inconsistent with him having some involvement since he used to work for the CIA. Okay, and it seemed to me that even given that it was suspicious when he was killed, because that week you'd had this fellow Trump, who, you know, was like in the polls, like at that point ahead of every Republican candidate and Obama. And on top of that,
birth certificate.
of course, he had just brought out the so-called non-existent long birth certificate, which Rachel Maddow, Chris Matthews said very smugly. Well, of course, if you write to Hawaii, all you get back is the shirt. I mean, anyway, so number one, there was with this thing, and of course, very quickly it was found out to be totally bogus with layers upon layers upon layers and that sort of thing. Okay, if you know anything about Adobe editing. So it seems to me it was very convenient that after that Thursday or Friday that came out, that all of a sudden Sunday we dragged, you know, this thing out. But it's even more suspicious when you realize that the compound he was in, the CIA had known about since, what, 2005 or something?
Here's the deal.
Yeah.
Osama bin Laden, after 9/11, he made interviews, made statements saying, we wouldn't do that. We didn't do it. We were not involved in it. He denied it. The research shows that he probably died in December of 2001, probably died of, you know, some disease connected to his kidney disease. But, you know, he's this boogeyman, and they kept him alive for a long time thinking, when we need him most, we can kill him. We'll capture him, we'll kill him. We'll need him, you know, we'll need him for a distraction, for a, you know, to take people's minds off things. You know, the American people are mighty gullible. I mean, have you not noticed?
Manuel Goldstein.
So yeah, he was probably died in 2001, and you know this whole thing. You know, Seymour Hersh, he came out and said that this whole story about the Bin Laden, you know, his death was bogus. Do you know that? I mean, he's a big name and respected mainstream for him to say that. Seymour Hersh.
Oh, yeah. You were taught.
Albert has a question.
Yeah, in 2007, I used to listen to the Power Hour, and I made the contact with the activists on 9/11. and he asked me to go to the city council and speak about it. I didn't feel right to do it myself, but now that we have more people, I think we should bring it to the city council. His idea was genius. And there's nothing gonna happen to us anyway. There's nothing they can do. All we're requesting is investigation. We cannot talk about this forever. And if we want to do something, we need to go to the city council and get their attention.
Well, you know, all this information has been brought through all the lawmakers in Washington. They've received packets, they've received DVDs, they've been visited by groups. I mean, there's nobody who doesn't know. They all know. They're all in on the cover of perpetuating this.
Can I make a comment on this?
Come up here. I'm done.
Now. I think the way in which you presented these 3 videos was excellent, because the World Trade Center 7 is the one thing that nobody who will think even a little bit can deny. So that, to me, is the pry bar that can crack the rock. And then you can go to the rest of the buildings and then go to all the other issues that the 3rd video was beginning to pull out. The whole picture of what's going on the earth has been troubling me for over 30 years, and I had intelligence service people, a dozen of them, come into my life during the years I was practicing law downtown, and they just gave me information that I would go home and lock the door and unplug the phone and sit there and think for hours to reconstruct a reality. This stuff, that a lot of what was brought out, particularly in that last film, is so troubling to most people. I mean, even people who think that it destroys their reality, and it has to be done piece by piece, laying the foundation. And the way you presented this was excellent tonight. And I think that I've gone to your meetings, not all of them, but a bunch of them, and sometimes there are things going on, and other times it's just a kind of a social get-together, like a lot of meetings. But I think this one issue that you guys have been on all of these years is the crowbar that can crack the rock in human consciousness. And then it goes a lot farther. Recently, Victor brought out to me, and to a lot of other people, the video Thrive. And he's been handing out videos on that. That takes and expands the whole picture of what's going on the earth enormously. And then there is another thing that I've been reading the last couple of days that I think everybody needs to go to, and that is Wilcox's site, divinecosmos.com, and look up financial tyranny. And he is talking about the power in money, which really controls everything on the earth. If you don't have the bank behind you, your war ends. If you have the money, then you have your war. And it was brought out to me years ago by a CIA agent who'd been 27 years in that organization, that every war, famine, and pestilence on the earth is a planned event. It's not an accident of nature. It's not stupidity and diplomacy. It's brilliance to make it look stupid to us. And we are the sheep. We are the pawns. We are the cattle that they drive into the slaughterhouse by dividing us up and making us fight each other and carry out all of this mayhem that the earth has been doing. I highly recommend that all of us help focus more on this 9/11, particularly WTC 7 issue, and then broaden it with the Thrive information and with the financial tyranny information on divinecosmos.com. This is the way to take it incrementally so that you don't just turn them off in the beginning, because it's overwhelming. And from the time I was a little kid, I was pursuing the truth. I was a why daddy kid, and when the repairman couldn't fix the lawnmower, I figured out how to do that when I was a little kid, and so forth. I mean, I just had to know the answer to things. And yet, so many times when I would get one of these big aha things, it was like, where did my world go? Where did my reality go? And it's very disturbing. I understand why it is so hard for people to accept things, and we need to stay on this issue that you guys have just so diligently been on. I'm just proud of you for what you've been doing. And then we need to broaden it to these other issues. I highly recommend you look at the material that Victor has been bringing forward on Thrive, and then go to Divine Cosmos and read Financial Tyranny. It's very important.
The interesting...
Oh, Joe, you gonna leave? You gonna wait until they finish? And
He always does that.
well, hey, why don't you have a minute?
He's a crybaby.
He's Cinderella.
I was sick all day with intestinal diabetes.
Oh, okay.
And I got to work tomorrow.
Here's the door, Joe.
That was really good.
Bye now. Thanks for coming.
You're well.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
I'm saying.
It was a little thing, it wasn't a speech. You can, yeah.
Hank, can you speak after John does?
We have a new operation in the works right now which could develop into something along the line of a 9/11. With this Malaysian Flight 370, I would urge you all to keep looking at the information. There have been sources coming out saying that that plane was commandeered and flown to Diego Garcia, where it's being fitted with nukes, because China came to support of Russia in the Crimea situation. That was the message, as best I can recall it right now. But the thing is as the government gets away with one thing after another going back, I'm hoping we're going to get a presentation on Waco. I think it's very much needed, because these things seem to build, and it's just getting worse. There's a need for outreach, a need to inform people as best we can and get others waking up. Sometimes you could wake up someone who can bring much more resources to the awakening than you would have ever dreamed. It's just as each one reaches one, it's more than an addition. It's a multiplication. Thank you.
That's true. That's true what he's saying. You never know, and a newly awakened person usually has so much more energy too. You know, newly awakened people, when they're like, wow, I see this, and then they're eager to do more about it. Hank's got something, but also I want to tell you guys two things. Last week, there was a trial going on in New York City, and it was Osama bin Laden's, and it was on Power Hour. She was talking about it. You heard it hardly anywhere else, you know, very little bits and pieces, because they were covering that guy who killed his girlfriend, you know, with the no legs and stuff. And they totally ignored it was Osama bin Laden's son-in-law. Did you know that was going on in New York? Son-in-law, you know? And that could have spurred more questions and comments about 9/11, but of course they had to keep it down. So anyways, Hank, what did you have to say?
Well, I guess you people see the importance of this, and I think since you're not at our meetings, you probably didn't think it was that important, but it is a key issue. And as he said, I agree with the Building 7 being a good wedge issue. So, I mean, this is heavy stuff. I mean, there's people really, you know, there's videos of all the people that got killed. But they were people not at our level. There were people like, you know, that were in the CIA, or John O'Neill was the FBI expert. But anyway, if you really want to get down into the center of this, and you're welcome to our meetings, this is a false flag. How does this fit into a bigger picture from another angle? That is now a common term for a false flag. And you mentioned a few, now people are on the lookout for false flags now, so right away there's a lot of stuff, and it might be preventing some, them getting away with some stuff and making it harder for them to really pull it off. But I think if they pull off something really major, that everybody's going to just fall in line. So we're still vulnerable there. Now, as far as false flags, there's a exceptional false flag, and that was the underwear bomber. Everybody remember a few Christmases ago, the Christmas bomber? The reason that's exceptional is because there was a person that was aware of false flag situation, and he happened to overhear a conversation when that person who burned his underwear got on the airplane. And he happened to be a very tough lawyer, and his wife, and they both heard them get this guy on without a passport. That place had the body scanners before we did. It was in Holland, Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam, and bad habits, sorry. I'm used to having to belt it out. And anyway, the thing that's unique about that false flag was, first they said, you know, the official story was he was just a crazy Muslim. And because of this guy's evidence, he insisted, look, there's a tape, there's a film of this guy at the counter being put through with no passport when some other guy helped usher him in. And well, that happened to be one of our CIA guys. And the FBI finally backed off in increments. It took them a month or more, but they kept changing the story and finally said, yeah, okay, that was our guy. We're not going to let you see the tape because we don't want to expose our agent. So that was one instance where low-level people like us had backed off the FBI. I mean, you know, it's like, because it was in public. So we had major false flag there. The anthrax was another one. Remember the anthrax? Everybody, we were reminded that is such baloney. That was supposed to, you know, that's so bad. It's a whole story in itself. Then the Sikh temple shootings. Do you remember the Sikh temple shootings? I think it was Colorado. Sikh, S-I-K-H. And what's interesting about that, it's a small thing compared to the others, but it's so clear, the evidence of the relatives saying, yeah, there was two guys out there, they caught him, they shot him, you know, and you can see it on YouTube. Thank God for YouTube. So it's a big can of worms. Those were the false flags that I thought were relevant. You brought that up. Come to our meetings. We need more people. Thank you.
Stuart's got something to say, but right before I bring him, this is Stuart. Come out, you got to talk up here. Stuart's going to be our guest speaker, even though I said I'm not going to announce them, but I know he'll come. That's, like I told you guys before, there's going to be two Mondays in April. That's the 7th and the 14th that we're going to be meeting at the Mecca. And then in May, it's the 12th and the 19th of May. Other than that, they'll all be here until the end of the year. Well, on the 14th of April, Stuart's going to be our guest speaker to speak about the Branch Davidians and Waco, because the anniversary is April 19th. And I'm sure he's going to want to encourage some remembrance of that. But Stuart has something to say about this, I guess.
Well, all I want to do is remind everybody that we protested on 9/11 right here on the overpass with signs, and people were driving by all the time honking their horns, and that's right, yeah. I mean, we were getting nothing, but we had like 3 people get negative on us. One was an off-duty firefighter who came over and got in one of the ladies' faces or something, you know, and you know, how we were disrespecting the dead. And no, hold on just a second. So we corrected him on that. But anyway, all I'm trying to say is, you know, Activists for Truth got out there. We got out there. We did something. You know, we didn't change the world, but we got in and we said something right here by the library built by a mass murdering war criminal. Well, I'll leave it at that. So, and then when they opened the library for the mass murdering war criminal, homosexual, pedophile, whatever else he is.
Been doing research.
Yes, little Bohemian Grover. Yes, all that stuff. Anyway, and we were out there with signs and all this kind of stuff, and we had a lot of people coming across from parking that were going there, and they were, you know, giving us the dirty looks, but lots of other people, I mean, they were walking by going to there going, yeah, we know, you know, yeah, you know, so we were getting nothing but positive stuff. The cops were cool. They were like, yeah, you know, and when we were surrounded by about 8 or 9 Dallas police, we were just talking to them. The point is, people know. That's all I'm really trying to say. And all the time, people know, and everywhere.
Okay, just real briefly, why do you have standing to talk about Waco?
What?
Why would you be an expert on Waco?
I'm an expert on Waco because Waco was the primary event. I knew about the Kennedy assassination. I knew about government cover-ups, and the governments don't always tell the truth, and they kind of got some shady stuff going on. But when I saw Waco, it woke me up to everything. I knew when they used tanks attacking a church community. I'd never heard of the Branch Davidians. I mean, it's Waco. You just drive through Waco. It's the best view of Waco's in the rearview mirror. So I'd never heard of those people, and I know a little bit about Seventh-day Adventists, and Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion and prohibiting the free exercise thereof is what I believe. So anyway, and I was after they murdered and burned out all those people and then covered up the evidence just like they did on 9/11, just like they did on Oklahoma City, just like they did to Sandy Hook, et cetera, et cetera. So, and they destroyed the evidence. We went, Alex Jones put a call out, and I was living in Austin, put a call out, and we went and we rebuilt a church there. And I was involved in that for 8 months. Going down there and rebuilding a church and for the survivors, and 3 or 4 of them, of the survivors, were actually still living on the property. And so, but I didn't know what the reason I'm an expert. Well, the reason I know a lot about it is I bought the lie of the Department of Transportation and the DPS and the FBI. I didn't know what to believe. Well, he's a pedophile, Well, he's gun running, and I'm like, gun running, And then I saw the pile of guns they had. The thing is, I did my homework, I did my research, and I saw the pile of guns that they supposedly pulled out. A couple of AK-47s and a couple of bolt-action .270 rifles, now there's nothing. I mean, there's probably 5 people in this room that have all that stuff. Anyway, and then I found out that he wasn't a pedophile. All the stuff they said about him was true, and even if it was true, all they had to do was go to the front door and arrest him, right? We all know that, but that's all they had to do, isn't it? All right, David, the previous sheriff used to call David when there was a complaint about something or some issue, and he'd put on his pants and clothes and drive down there. Now, I'm not a Branch Davidian. I don't agree with what they believe or teach, but so what? I don't agree with what the Baptists or the Catholics teach either. So, anyway, and working on there, I got to know the Branch Davidians, and I found out that the survivors that I've met and known and spent a lot of time with are the most caring and gentle, forgiving people even for what happened to them. One woman there, she lost 4 kids and her husband in the fire, and Clive Doyle, a bunch of us know Clive, and what a gentle soul he is. And anyway, so I'm looking forward to speaking on that. I'm also going to speak at College of Complexes on it too, to try to bring up the memory, because it's 21 years ago. So we need to remember it.
I got a question for you. Can we go back to 9/11? You can edit this. You said when on the 10th anniversary, was it? You were out here, whatever, it was the last anniversary, you were out here.
Yeah.
And you got some thumbs up.
Yeah.
And you got people saying, yeah, and they went to the Bush Library to celebrate with him. I'm saying, is that a good thing? That the American people know and...
Well, yes and no. I hear what you're saying, but a lot of these guys, they work at some company and they're probably embarrassed that they're there, but their boss is,
Right.
So
get along.
we were just thinking if there was ever a place for a drone strike, that was the place.
It's for everybody. Is that a good thing? I mean, this is the battleground now, really. If we're going to build people's minds, to get them to not just kind of know, but to really know enough to...
Well, yeah, that's true, but God lives in Dallas. He's he lives up here in Preston Hollow or Highland Park, and he's white, and he's a cowboy fan. I mean, I'm not being ridiculous here, but I mean, this is the belt buckle of the Bible Belt too. So we're fighting those Muslims. We're gonna kill them brown skinned people, and that came over. It's all that stuff. So it's all the propaganda, and unfortunately, people don't think. They're watching.
To me, it's scary that the people know, just like the Germans knew before Hitler came. I mean, this is a kind of, I think, like people will go along with anything until it's so late. Again.
Okay, but I would say yes, it was positive that even though the people were going over here, it's positive that they were.
I'm not saying don't do it.
They were kind of embarrassed, and shit, I got to go with this thing because the boss will give me a hard time if I don't, and lots. The point is, lots and lots and lots of people know. But they're not active, so we got to engage them.
That's the problem, guys. And by
Not
the way,
just not active, they'll go on a applaud. I'm very
yeah, people are in fear all the time of losing their jobs or getting called a name. That's what bothers me, guys. I know.
It's not just not active.
If they think they're afraid
Go
now,
along.
they're really going to be afraid later.
That's right.
The longer
That's
you
the
ignore
truth.
something, the worse it's going to be.
Like a cancer or anything, you can't really ignore it. But guys, get your water, get your basics, like I'm always telling you, because at any point these things could break loose, So get your water and don't become a victim of having to take the hand that's going to give you something for your family, and then you got all those excuses, but my kids were starving. Do your part. You got to do your part. Another thing, too, is we've got to unite better, guys. I remember that 9/11 day. We were on the bridge, and the 9/11 people didn't even come. Bruce came and he couldn't find us, Now there's, and it's like we got to have better networking. I'm not, look forward. I'm one of those. I'm a real, realist. Tell me too, But we got to have better networking. We are everyone, but we're still disjointed. Too much, guys. I keep saying, go to the website. We need to come on Thursday. We need to keep finding out. Okay, what's this person doing? What's that person doing? Because just like what Hank's saying, the masses are like that, but we are too. I'm going to be a little hypercritical. Even us people who are the activists are totally dropping the ball, guys. We are. I mean, I am too, and it's too bad. So we've got to multiply at least more of us so that we're all doing a little bit and it gets done. Because tons and tons of people, this is why it's a little frustrating to me. I don't necessarily want, but be on camera or whatever. But the point of the matter is, I keep hearing about these people. Oh yeah, we're going to have a revolution. We're going to do it. You can't even get them to get up at 8 o'clock in the morning, Come on, guys. It's like a joke sometimes when I hear these people, they're going to be the one, they're going to resist and all that, but you can't even get them to do the littlest things, right, Marjorie? So, I don't know. That sounds that's not my normal personality. I'm usually the rah, rah, rah cheerleader and stuff, but I agree with you, Hank, I agree with you. So let's try to find ways to encourage people, and so I got to stop it. So, okay, it's 10 o'clock. We don't want to stay too much longer, so we'll call the meeting over if you guys want to.
Are you going to do the 9/11 this year?
No, what's the anniversary? Wait a minute. We already had the 9/11 anniversary this year. Wait, what is? September 11th. Duh. Yeah, right. September. Of course. Then let's do that, guys. Look, we've got these lit up signs. They made them. They haven't been used yet. Okay? You just have to hold the sign, guys. But someone's got to take an initiative. Thursday at 6:35 in Park or whatever. Somebody's got to do it. I mean, I will do some of these things, guys, but you all have to use your imagination and come up with a time and get someone else to be there with you. Okay, thank you. We're over. Bye.